Hogwarts, The Return of Turmoil. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 201 Fishing. Hugo was sweating profusely from exhaustion. The girl who took the initiative to ask him to set up the tent looked very regretful, because Hugo didn't even know what the bracket was used for. Oh my god. Maureen, you actually set it up. Hugo looked at Maureen's tent in surprise. He originally wanted to seek comfort from Maureen, because he knew that Maureen would definitely not be able to set up a tent, but he didn't expect that Maureen would be the first to set up the tent. Yes, I set it up, Maureen said. Hugo remembered something, glanced at Anran who was sitting next to him, pulled Maureen aside and said, "Tell me, did you use magic secretly?" Maureen thought about it, and didn't hide anything, and admitted, "I did. I knew it." Hugo pouted, and then said, "But you used magic outside of school." Maureen told Hugo why he was able to use magic outside of school. Hugo's eyes lit up. "What are you waiting for? Come and help me. That girl named Lucy has been complaining about me. I'm a wizard, why do I come to learn such useless skills? Hurry up." Maureen looked at the others. Now many people have almost set up their tents under the guidance of Maggie. He hesitated for a moment and said, "Then you have to choose an inconspicuous place, otherwise there will be too many muggles." "That's no problem." Hugo ran back happily, persuaded the girl named Lucy to leave, and then moved the tent to Maureen's side. Anran kept looking at them curiously and asked, "Where are you going?" "I'll help Hugo set up the tent," Maureen explained, motioning Hugo to move the tent behind the tree, where there were fewer people and it would not be seen by others. "Do you want my help?" Anran asked. No, it will be quick." Maureen ran over, took out his wand and tapped the tent, and Hugo's tent stood up quickly. "Cool. I envy you for being able to use magic outside of school." Hugo was a little dissatisfied. "I really hope I can also use magic outside of school." Being able to use magic and do it yourself like a muggle, this is not what Hugo wants. He has never liked the muggle lifestyle. In the afternoon, everyone rested for a while. Marjorie and Julie distributed fishing rods to everyone and prepared to go fishing in the small river at the foot of the mountain. "What are these caterpillars for?" Hugo was carrying a small bucket with many beige bugs in it. Marjorie said it was bait, but I didn't know you need bait for a fishing. Maureen fiddled with the little bugs. Some of them were still squirming, and some were already dying. He was a little skeptical. Can this kind of bug take the initiative to drill into the fish's mouth? Maureen and Hugo had both fished before, but wizards' fishing was different from that of muggles. Wizards didn't need to use bait. The fish hooks they used would turn into bugs that fish liked, and they would take the initiative to find fish at the bottom of the water, and then drill into the fish's mouth, while muggle hooks could only wait for a fish to eat the bait. If you find fishing too troublesome, just cast some magic on the fishing net and let them surround the fish themselves. "I don't think so." Hugo picked the biggest bug and put it on the hook. "How can you catch fish if the hook can't move?" Maureen also picked a little bug, walked to the shore, and threw the hook into the water. The hook caused ripples in the water, and then the water surface returned to calm again. But Hugo kept shaking the hook, and the ripples on the water surface affected Maureen. Marjorie said that you can't move when fishing. Maureen reminded. "If the bait doesn't move, how can the fish find the bait?" Hugo asked, puzzled. Maureen thought Hugo was right, but he thought of his and Hugo's pitiful muggle knowledge, and said, "Maybe muggles think differently from us, we should listen to Marjorie." "Why do you keep talking about muggles? What does muggle mean?" Anran asked curiously. "Oh, this muggle." Maureen didn't know how to explain, so he said casually, "It's a kind of fruit, like watermelon. Hugo and I like it very much." Hugo laughed. "I haven't even heard of this kind of fruit," Anran said. Maureen touched his forehead. "How do you say this fruit?" "It's rare, a specialty." "Yes, it's rare." Hugo still couldn't stop laughing. The location they chose was not good, especially since Hugo would occasionally lift the hook to see if any fish had taken the bait. When he lifted the hook, the water surface would rustle, and the float on Maureen's hook would also move around, scaring away any fish that came. Half an hour later, the two hadn't caught a single fish. But from time to time in the distance, other people would excitedly shout that they had caught another big fish, which made Hugo envious. Hugo's partner Lucy blamed Hugo beside him. "Hugo, You'll scare the fish away if you move like this. Hugo stuck out his tongue, and he leaned towards Maureen and whispered, Mullen, why don't you use that? Isn't it necessary? It doesn't matter if I can't catch any fish anyway. Maureen knew that Hugo wanted him to use magic, but he didn't care whether he caught any fish or not. But Marjorie said that our dinner tonight is grilled fish. Do you want to watch others eat fish? Hugo gestured to Ran next to him. You can't let Ran and Lucy watch others eat, right? They are our partners. Ran's side also didn't have a single fish hook because of Hugo's disturbance. The four of them sat together, and with Hugo constantly throwing the hook, it was basically impossible to catch fish. Maureen thought about it, then squatted down by the water and put his hand into the river. This time he didn't use a wand, but tried to cast a tracking spell with his bare hands. This spell can track the movement of fish underwater. What are you doing? Ran asked. Testing the water temperature. Maureen answered casually. Testing the water temperature? Are you going to go in the water to catch fish? Ran asked in surprise. Teacher Marjorie said we can't go in the river. He's not going in the water to catch fish. Hugo grinned. He's going to see if the river water has boiled. The fish are probably ready to be caught. Maureen calmly retracted his hand and glared at Hugo. Shut up, Granger, this way. He stood up, picked up the fish hook and the fish bucket and walked upstream. Hugo quickly stood up and followed. Where are you going? Ran asked. Ran, come over here too. There are more fish here. Maureen waved at Ran. The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar. Ran picked up the fishing rod and followed Maureen in confusion. How do you know where there are more fish? This depends on experience. Maureen calmly lied. Grandpa taught me how to judge where fish like to stay based on the speed and temperature of the water flow. My grandfather is a fishing expert. You know, the water flow in some places is too fast, and the manta rays here will not take the bait. Manta rays. Ran looked at the water in confusion, but Teacher Marjorie said there are only perch here. Yes, that's right, I mean, the perch don't like the water flow here. Maureen said nonsense seriously. In fact, he didn't know what kind of fish perch was. Maureen had already walked upstream. He stopped while walking, squatted down to the river from time to time to stretch out his hand to measure the river water, and looked very professional. After a while, he stopped by a protruding stone, but saw that Horace was there. Freak, get out of here, you will scare my fish away. Horace stared at Ran fiercely. Ran stood timidly, feeling a little uneasy. But Maureen walked in front of Ran and looked at Horace. Didn't you brush your teeth properly just now? I thought your mouth would be cleaner. Horace saw Maureen and remembered that his face was buried in a pile of stinky mud just now. He was immediately annoyed, but he thought of something and sneered. You will understand that this girl is not a good thing. If you are in the same group with her, don't think about catching fish in the afternoon. Really? Why do I feel that I have a good luck in the afternoon? Maureen responded disapprovingly. I have warned you that we call her a freak for a reason. She will only bring disaster to people. Horace looked at Ran with disgust. Ran held her little hand and looked very sad. Let's go, Ran, there is no need to talk nonsense with him. Maureen turned around and comforted. But Ran took 2 steps back, her face turned pale again, and she whispered, he's right. If you join me, I might make you unable to catch fish. No fish. Maureen shrugged and pointed at Hugo. I always thought that only Hugo would make me unable to catch fish. Yes, it's my honor. Hugo grinned and made a scissor hand gesture, not feeling guilty at all. He stretched his neck to look at Horace's fish bucket. This guy didn't catch any fish either. Because you disturbed me from fishing. Horace said angrily. Don't blame others if you don't have the ability. Hugo pouted, then turned to Maureen and asked, are you sure it's here? Go a little further. Let's go, Ran, don't pay attention to this guy. Maureen walked forward a few steps, then turned back to let Ran follow. Ran hesitated for a moment, looked at Horace worriedly, and followed Maureen. I'll fish for you. Maureen pulled out his telescopic fishing rod, and without putting on the bait, he reached out and touched the hook, then threw the hook out. Horace had been watching Maureen, and when he saw that Maureen didn't even take the bait, he immediately laughed at him. How stupid. How can you fish without bait? Do you think the fish will automatically take the bait? I've already told you that you can't catch any fish with this freak. It seems that you are also a stupid country bumpkin. If you can catch a fish, I will jump into the river right away. Maybe. As he was talking, Maureen's fishing rod began to sink, and he quickly began to reel in the line. Splash! A lively river perch jumped out of the river. The expression on Horace's face was immediately stunned. Chapter 202, Fishing as You Like It. The perch was 20 centimeters long and kept jumping in the air, trying to get rid of the hook. Maureen grabbed the perch, and he didn't need to do anything. The hook fell off by itself, and Maureen put the perch into the barrel. Who said he wanted to jump in and swim? Hugo laughed and handed his hook to Maureen. Maureen rubbed it with his fingers and gave it back to Hugo. Hugo also threw his hook out. As soon as the hook entered the water, it immediately became like a living worm and began to seduce the perch in the water. Hollith said angrily, "It's just stepping on dog shit. What's the big deal? You bunch of country bumpkins, with a little bit of country shit luck, you are blindly showing off. I don't believe you can catch a second one. If you can catch a second one, I will jump down from here immediately." Splash! This time it was Hugo's perch that came out of the water. Horace's eyes almost popped out. He watched in disbelief as Hugo put the 30-centimeter-long perch into the barrel, and his mouth couldn't close for a long time. He had been waiting here for half an hour without catching a single fish. How come these two country bumpkins caught 2 fish at once? The river is quite deep. I think it's better for you not to swim casually, Maureen kindly reminded. Horace's face flushed, and he looked extremely ugly. He originally wanted to ridicule these 3 people, but he didn't expect to shoot himself in the foot. He was slapped twice by Maureen and Hugo. But it was impossible for Horace to jump into the river. He snorted coldly, turned his head and continued to focus on his fishing rod, as if he didn't hear anything. "Enron, come and try it too, we will have a big harvest." Maureen turned his head and said, "Yes, we will definitely return with a full load." Hugo had already thrown out the hook again. Enron came over doubtfully and asked in confusion, "Why can't you catch fish without bait?" Maureen and Hugo looked at each other, and Maureen coughed twice and said, "It's like this, fishing requires sincerity. It's not what bait you use, but what kind of mentality you are prepared to fish with. As long as the mentality is right, the fish willing to take the bait will naturally take the bait." Hugo tried hard to hold back his laughter. Maureen's ability to talk nonsense was even better than his. "Oh, I seem to have heard my mother say that there is a saying in the East that Jang Taegong fishes, and those who are willing will take the bait. Is that what it means?" And Ran asked curiously. Yes, you see, your mother also understands this truth." Maureen had no idea who Jang Taegong was, and continued to add, "I heard that fishing in this place without bait will have a higher chance of catching a fish." Maureen took Enran's hook and quietly cast a transformation spell on it. The transformed hook can only become a live bait to lure the perch after entering the water. There is no abnormality outside the water. "So what kind of mentality should I use to fish?" Enran asked nervously. "Just do whatever you want and fish in the way that is most comfortable for you." Maureen leisurely caught another 15-centimeter perch from the river. Enran also threw her own hook into the river. When she was wondering whether Maureen and Hugo's method would work, she didn't expect that her float sank. The water surface began to splash, and ripples kept turning over. She actually caught one. "See? We were right, weren't we?" Maureen helped Enran take the hook out of the fish's mouth. Horace, who was standing by, couldn't stand it any longer. He had been waiting there for a long time without catching any fish, but Maureen and the other 3 had already caught 5. This was too much to ask. Horace angrily took back his hook, then quietly took off the bait on the hook, and then threw the fishing rod without bait into the river, intending to learn the fishing method of Maureen and Hugo, without bait, and let the fish take the bait willingly. "You have to be sincere to get it." Maureen held back his laughter. He noticed Hyle's actions and deliberately said loudly. Horace, who knew nothing about magic, thought it was impossible to catch fish without bait, unless his hook also had the magic to turn into a water bug. They had only been fishing for less than half an hour, and Maureen and Hugo's wooden barrels could no longer hold any more. After counting carefully, there were at least 10 big and small fish. Hugo had always complained that the bucket Marjorie prepared for them was too small. If it was bigger, he could catch all the fish in the river. Horace next to him still didn't catch any fish. He foolishly imitated the free-for-all fishing method of Maureen and Hugo, throwing the hook in various ways and pulling it up to have a look, but he just couldn't catch any fish like Maureen and the others. Enran carefully looked through the fish in her bucket. She didn't catch as many fish as Maureen and Hugo, but she still released some smaller fish. "Why did you release them, Enran?" Maureen asked. My dad said that small fry can't be caught. The Fisheries Bureau has regulations on the size of fishing. If small fry are released, the fish in the river will not become extinct. Many fishing enthusiasts will abide by this regulation. And Rand said seriously, only fishing big fish and not small fish is a sustainable development route. In order to protect the fry, the Muggle world also has a closed fishing season, and fishing is not allowed for several months a year. Really? There are such rules. Hugo spread his hands. For wizards like them, there are not so many rules. They can quickly add some magic potions to the fry to make them grow quickly, and then roast them and eat them directly without worrying about sustainability. Yes, Hugo, we should also abide by it. After all, we are also, normal citizens. Maureen gestured to Hugo and began to search for the fry in his fish bucket. He released all the fish under 10 centimeters and kept 5 big fish. The latest novels are first published on 69 Shuba. You are lucky. I decided to let you live a little longer. Hugo threw the small fish in his bucket back into the water casually, and then said to the big fish that stayed, as for you, you are even luckier. You can be eaten by me. They threw the smaller fish back into the river casually, but Horace, who didn't catch any fish, was almost angry. Every time Maureen and Hugo threw the small fish into the river and splashed water, it seemed to be laughing at him, making him envious and resentful. Finally, he couldn't help it, threw the fishing rod, and shouted to Ran, "Freak, bring the fish you caught. Please, don't make trouble for yourself." Maureen didn't really want to cast magic on Muggles, but every time Horace would come to bump into his gun, asking for trouble. Horace strode towards and ran along the wet shore, but at this moment, he suddenly stepped on a clump of wet water plants and slipped. Ah! Horace screamed in fear and fell into the river. This time it was not Maureen who did it, but Horace himself who slipped and fell accidentally. Be careful. And Rand screamed and stretched out his hand. Then a column of water suddenly rose from the river and held Horace, who was about to fall into the river. Maureen and Hugo looked at each other, and then their eyes fell on Unran. Unran is also a wizard? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 203, Bite Back. No wonder Unran was called a freak by these Muggle kids. It turned out that it was because Unran was a wizard. Presumably, Horace had seen Unran accidentally perform magic before, so he told others that Unran was a freak. Maureen and Hugo were very happy. After all, if Unran was a wizard, then this summer camp would not be too boring. One more companion means one more common topic. But Horace's face twisted. What do you think you are doing? You monster. You actually used your witchcraft on me, right? You devil. After Horace stabilized his body, he did not have a trace of excitement after surviving a disaster, but was very angry instead. How can you talk like that? She saved you. Horace shouted. She saved me? She just wanted to kill me. Horace picked up a stone from the ground and threw it at Unran. She wanted to drown me. This freak. She should be arrested and put in jail. Are you looking for death? Maureen stretched out his hand angrily and blocked the stone thrown by Horace. If it wasn't for her, you would have fallen into the river long ago. What happened? Marjorie heard Horace's roar from a distance and came over to ask. Horace pointed at Unran and said, "Teacher, it's her. She is a demon. She just wanted to push me into the river. I didn't, I wanted to." Unran looked like she was about to cry. She looked at Maureen in fear, tears already welling up in her eyes. Horace, did you misunderstand? She is just a girl, how could she? Marjorie didn't seem to believe what Horace said. Teacher, I saw it. She just did something very strange. She is a freak. Only freaks can do that. Lucy also raised her hand and pointed at Unran. She came to find Hugo, but she also saw the scene of Unran performing magic. She said, she is really a devil. She saw the water in the river to drown Horace. See you big-headed ghost. She is not a devil. Hugo said to Lucy bluntly. Hugo, you shouldn't be with her. She will kill you sooner or later. Lucy is Hugo's partner. She can't wait to let Hugo see Unran's true nature. Oh, really? I think she is much better than you. Hugo said impatiently. But the other Muggle children looked at Unran anxiously. They were very afraid of things they didn't know, especially the children in their teens, who were even more afraid of such things. A freak actually wants to harm people. That's too much. We don't want to be with freaks. Send her home. She should be locked up. Many teenagers shouted, and some impulsive ones even picked up stones on the ground and threw them at and ran. Stop, you idiots. Molin protected and ran behind him. None of the stones hid and ran. They were all moved to other places by Molin. He looked at this group of ignorant people angrily. And Rand saved Horace, but Horace actually bit back. Others were so ignorant and insulted. They were really uneducated. I'm not a freak, I'm not a freak. And Rand retreated in panic and cried. She wiped her tears and suddenly turned around and ran towards the woods on the river bank. And ran, wait a minute, you are definitely not a freak. Maureen hurriedly chased after her, but Rand ran very fast. When she ran past, a bush suddenly appeared on the ground, blocking Maureen's way. Maureen couldn't dodge in time and bumped into the bush, almost falling down. This time everyone saw the abnormally growing bushes. Some people were so scared that they screamed, and even Maggie was startled. Ah! It's a monster. Many people hid behind Maggie, their faces pale with fear. And ran, don't go, wait, we have something to tell you. Maureen kicked the bushes in front of him, but when he went around, Rand had disappeared in the woods. Why is she running so fast? Hugo also caught up. I don't know. She may have used some magic because she was too scared. She can't control the magic yet. If something goes wrong, it will be bad. Let's go find her. Maureen turned his head angrily and looked at Horace standing by the river. He was very angry. He didn't see any action. He just had a thought. The stone under Horace's feet suddenly rolled. He tripped and fell into the river with a thump. You stupid guy, if you don't want others to save you, just go into the water. Maureen just punished Horace. He knew that Marjorie was next to him and would save this guy. He turned around and ran to the woods again. Help. I can't swim. Help. Horace was struggling in the river. Marjorie reacted and quickly jumped into the river to pull Horace up. Horace had already drunk several mouthfuls of water and his clothes were soaked. Maureen and Hugo rushed into the woods. Maureen drew his wand and shouted loudly, and ran, where are you? Come back soon, you are not a freak, you are normal. But there was no sign of Ran in the woods. There were only a few birds flapping their wings and flying into the sky, and leaves falling down. There was a damp miasma in the woods that had not yet dissipated. The ground was covered with weeds, and no one was seen. The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar. The figure appears. Maureen pointed his wand at the woods, and an invisible airflow emanated, but it was quickly blocked by the woods. His apparition spell did not find Ran. I wonder where she went? Why did she disappear all of a sudden? Hugo climbed over a stone with great effort and looked around. Hugo, you wait here, I'll go first. Maureen said. Wait, how are you going? Do you know where she is? Hugo asked. But there was a slight explosion in the woods, and Maureen had disappeared beside Hugo and came to the top of a tall tree. Hugo opened his mouth in surprise. How can you apparate? Yes, I can. You search here, I'll go to the front and explain it later. Maureen jumped off the branch and fell down, but soon disappeared in midair. It's amazing. Hugo couldn't help but admire it. He knew the difficulty of apparate. Few people could do it to this level in the first grade. Maureen flashed from one tree to another. He looked for Rand's shadow in the woods, but Rand disappeared as if she had disappeared out of thin air. Rand. Maureen shouted loudly, and he even pointed his wand at his throat, using magic to amplify his voice, and the sound spread far away. Maureen apparate to a pine tree, and there was a snake on the branch spitting its tongue at him. He swept it and threw it under the tree. Maureen remembered the spell Alton used last time, and he immediately waved forward, search for the trace. Soon he found a magical wave coming back from the front, and there was a faint sound of sobbing. He jumped onto a big poplar tree and finally saw Rand's figure on a sloping hillside. You are here, so good. Maureen appeared in front of Rand while speaking. Don't come over. Rand sobbed, I might hurt you. Chapter 204, Watching the Sunset from the Treetops. Don't worry too much, that kind of ability is normal. Maureen advised. It's not normal, I might hurt you. Rand said with tears in her eyes. To be honest, the possibility that you can hurt me is not very high. Maureen spread his hands, because I also know your magic. Rand stopped crying, looked up at Maureen, but soon shook her head. You must be lying to me. You are a good person. I don't want you to get hurt. Oh, thank you for saying that. Maureen blinked and took a step forward. I mean, you can try to use your abilities on me, such as splashing water on me, burning me with fire, etc. I think I should be fine. And Rand stood up and retreated towards the stone on the slope, shaking her head. Don't get close to me anymore. Everyone doesn't like me. I'm really a freak. If you are a freak, then Hugo and I are both freaks. Maureen spread his hands, and then saw that Rand had retreated to the edge of the stone, and quickly reminded, don't retreat anymore. If you retreat again, you will fall. Before Maureen finished speaking, and Rand had already screamed and slid down. Be careful. Maureen teleported into the air and hugged and ran. In the blink of an eye, he reappeared on a big rock. You. And Rand looked at Maureen in doubt. Oh, how can I put this? Do you understand what I mean now? Maureen found that he was still hugging and ran, and his face turned slightly red. He had never hugged a girl before, so he quickly let go. Sorry. Maureen scratched his head. Rand panted, looked at the place where she had just slid down, and asked carefully, how did you do it? This is magic. Look. Maureen drew a circle in the air with his wand, and a bunch of purple daisies were held in his hand. Do you want it? I can also conjure other flowers. I don't know what you like, you can tell me. Maureen handed the purple daisies to Rand. Rand hesitated for a moment, a little bit unbelieving. After a long while, she took the bunch of purple daisies and said, thank you. She held the bunch of purple daisies in her palm, looked at Maureen, and asked, is this really normal? Normal? It couldn't be more normal. Maureen pointed his wand at the big stone under his feet, and the hard stone seemed to melt and formed a bench. Sit down. Maureen pointed at the bench. And Rand looked at the wand in Maureen's hand in surprise, a little unbelievable. But, why do you have this ability? And Rand asked while sitting on the bench. Because we are wizards. Maureen also sat on the other side of the bench and smiled. Are you 11 years old this year? Rand nodded. Then you should receive the admission letter from Hogwarts next month. Maureen said. Hogwarts. Hogwarts is a school that specializes in training wizards. I study magic there. I am 12 years old this year. Maureen thought for a moment and whispered, strictly speaking, minors cannot use magic outside of school. You have to keep it a secret for me. Why can't I use magic? And Rand asked puzzled. They are afraid that we will be too impulsive and use magic on Muggles, causing unrest among Muggles. Maureen explained, it is said in the history of magic that when magic was just developed, Muggles were afraid of magic, just like Horace was afraid of your ability. They would use various means to persecute wizards. At that time, wizards did not know many magics, so in order to protect themselves, they could only hide themselves, and then they have been hiding until now. Isn't Muggle a kind of fruit? This. Maureen smiled embarrassedly. He explained the meaning of Muggle to Rand a few hours ago, and he didn't know that Rand was also a wizard at that time. Muggle is the abbreviation for people who can't do magic, such as the group of people at the foot of the mountain are all Muggles. Maureen said. Rand lowered her head and twisted her hands together, but neither of my parents has this ability. Why can I do it alone? This may be because someone in your ancestor is a wizard. I don't know much about heredity, but there are many people in the school like you, whose parents are Muggles. This is normal. Maureen waved his wand again, and many leaves floated around them, and the leaves slowly circled around them, like dragonflies and butterflies flying. Rand curiously reached out to grab the leaves, and the leaves fell on her arms, shook gently, and floated up again. So I'm not a freak. Rand wiped away her tears and asked. The latest novels are first published on Liuji 9 Shuba. To Muggles, we are freaks, but that's just their jealousy. Maureen disagreed, and then asked, have you performed magic in front of many Muggles before? Rand nodded silently, and said after a while, when I was in kindergarten, I drew a little man on paper, and the little man started talking. Although he soon stopped moving, it scared a lot of people. Later in class, a group of bees ran into the classroom. Everyone was scared. I didn't know what was going on, so I shouted, and all the bees circled around me and left. From then on, they started calling me a freak, and no one wanted to play with me. And Rand looked very sad. I just wanted to stay at home during the summer vacation. My mother said I should go out and communicate with more people, so she signed me up for a summer camp, but Horace was there, and he told people about me everywhere. That annoying guy, It doesn't matter, you are not the same kind of person as him. Maureen looked at the sky. It was already evening and the sun had set in the west. He thought for a while and said, "You are not afraid of heights, are you?" "No, what's wrong?" "Then I'll take you to a place." Maureen held Anran's hand. Anran's hand was very warm. Maureen thought to himself, and disappeared with Anran. When they appeared again, they were already on a high branch. He raised his hand and looked at the opposite mountain. The top of the mountain was covered with tall red pines, more than 30 meters high. He pulled and ran to the top of the tallest tree again. The two of them sat in the middle of the branches, overlooking the mountains and forests at the highest point. The setting sun lit up the clouds in the sky, covering the mountains and forests with a layer of golden waves. The dusk was hazy, peaceful and quiet. Birds flew across the sky, busy returning to their nests. The crisp sounds echoed in the mountains, singing with the sunset. "I have never seen such a beautiful scenery," Anran exclaimed. "I used to sit in a high place and watch the sunset. Of course, I was with an old man who loved to play tricks on people. He said that one day he could take a girl to the top of a tree to watch the sunrise and sunset, which would make the girl feel better." Maureen smiled shyly. "I thought of bringing you here." Anran also smiled. The sunset glowed on her eyelashes, and the shadow of the sunset was reflected in her bright and childish eyes, which was a different kind of beauty. "Thank you," Anran said. "You're welcome." Maureen leaned against the tree trunk comfortably. "When you go to Hogwarts, you will find that you are a normal person. You don't have to pay attention to them." The two sat on the branches, watching the sunset sink into the earth little by little, taking away all the unhappiness of today. The sunset stretched their shadows very long, projecting them among the leaves, sparse and fragmented, but together. The wind blew gently, the leaves rustled, quiet and beautiful. Chapter 205 Weird Woods. The voices of Marjorie and Julie could be heard in the distance. They seemed to be looking for Maureen and Anran, and they sounded anxious. "We should go back," Maureen said, and then he remembered something and said, "Wizards have to hide their existence. Don't mention these things to them. Just pretend that you are lost in the woods. I will try to make them forget these things." In fact, for wizard children who have not started school, even if they use magic outside of school, it is generally not a big deal. After all, adults don't care too much about children's affairs. But Marjorie saw it just now, so Maureen felt it necessary to cover it up. "Then how are you going to make them forget these things?" "Use the Oblivion Charm." Maureen gestured at his wand. "To be honest, I have never used it on anyone before, but I think my spell should work." Anran looked at Maureen's wand with envy. "Is this wand expensive? Do wizards also use pounds?" "Oh, we use gold galleons, which is different from Muggles. Don't worry, the school has subsidies for students from non-wizard families, and you will buy a wand of your own." Maureen stretched out his hand. "Then are you ready? We are going back, remember, keep it secret." Anran held Maureen's hand, and the two disappeared in the last rays of sunset in a blink of an eye. Maureen took and ran to the original woods and appeared next to Hugo, which scared Hugo. He lost his footing and fell into the wet mud. "Remind me when you appear." Hugo got up from the ground and muttered. "Sorry, are you okay?" Maureen took out his wand and removed the mud from Hugo's body. "I'm lost and can't find my way back." Hugo spread his hands. "To be honest, if you don't come to find me, I think I'll pull out my wand and cast magic. Maybe someone from the Ministry of Magic will come to warn me, and then I can get out." After a moment Hugo said again, "Hi, Anran, I'm glad you're okay. Are you that too?" Anran asked in a low voice. "You know, a wizard." "Yes, I'm a wizard too." Hugo put his wand back into his pocket. "But I can't cast magic outside of school. I really envy Maureen. Let's go back quickly. I want to cast a forgetfulness spell for Marjorie and Julie." Maureen listened to the shouts of Marjorie and Julie in the woods, judged the direction, and was about to continue moving forward when suddenly all the sounds around him disappeared, and even the chirping of birds was hidden in the twilight. Maureen stopped and asked, "Do you feel something is wrong?" Hugo nodded and looked around warily. "It seems strange, it has become too quiet all of a sudden." "Anran, did you fail to control your magic?" "It's not me, I don't know how to cast magic." Anran shook her head. Maureen took 2 steps forward, and the fallen leaves creaked under his feet, which was very clear in this forest. His heart jumped, and a very strange feeling surged into his heart again. Doi suddenly came out of Maureen's pocket, climbed onto Maureen's shoulder, and called twice. You feel it too. Maureen turned his head and looked at Doi. Doi shook her head twice. What do you feel? Hugo and the others couldn't see Doi, so they thought Maureen was talking to them. I have a strange feeling. When my grandfather and I went to the Muggle Opera House a few days ago, I encountered this situation. Maureen explained. This is too weird. The Muggle Opera House is already very strange. Maybe there's black magic cast somewhere, but is there any magic cast in this forest? Whatever, I'll just take you away from here. Maureen made a prompt decision. Last time he had his grandfather with him, so he wasn't afraid of anything, but this time it was just him, Hugo, and Ran who didn't even have a wand. It wasn't wise for 3 teenagers to stay here. Maureen grabbed Ran and Hugo, thinking about the river where he had just fished, and disappeared into the air. Poof! Maureen and the others reappeared, but when Maureen saw the scene clearly, he was slightly stunned. They were still in the woods, not at the river. We're still here? Maureen, you didn't learn apparition, did you? Hugo kicked the branches on the ground and asked uncertainly. I don't know, but I've learned apparition for a few months and it's never been a problem. Maureen tried again, but he disappeared from the air with Ran and Hugo, and still appeared in the same place. Is it possible that you can't take care of the 2 of us by yourself? Ran asked timidly. It's possible. After all, you are also a first-year student. Then, Maureen, take Ran out first. Hugo said very gentlemanly. He glanced at the gradually darkening woods. The surroundings were so quiet that it was a little scary. He was a little nervous. After a while, he added, remember to come back and take me. I will. Don't worry. But don't walk around. Just wait for 5 seconds. Maureen thought Ran was right. He had never even used apparition to take other people with him before. Now he could only try this. As long as he took Ran out first and then came back to take Hugo, it should be quick. He held Ran's hand and reminded her again, Hugo, remember not to run around. I'll be back soon. He and Ran quickly disappeared into the air. The latest novels are first published on the 6th-9th book bar. Puff. You're back so soon. Hugo was still standing in front of Maureen and Ran, saying helplessly. Maureen was shocked. He still couldn't leave the woods. This woods is very strange. I didn't encounter this situation when I apparated just now. Maureen said in a deep voice. It seems that we need to go out directly. You 2 follow me closely. Maureen identified the direction. This place is a hillside. As long as he walks down, he will definitely reach the river. But this woods is difficult to walk. Even if he walks down, it is not easy to walk. He can only take a detour. Once he takes a detour, he will go up and don't know where he will go. This is why Hugo got lost just now. At this time, the sky has completely darkened. Maureen emitted a ball of white light and let it float in front of him to illuminate. Hugo, take out the wand. I have it. Maureen carefully stepped over a fallen tree trunk. He stepped on the trunk and waved the wand. A branch on the protruding crooked tree became a coal lamp, illuminating the way behind. Remember, if I have any abnormal situation, you must tap my shoulder in time. Maureen remembered the situation at the opera house last time. At that time, it was Grandpa Alton who pulled him out of that strange illusion. What can you say that's unusual? Hugo asked in confusion. Just in case. Maureen didn't know how to explain. Every time he walked a distance, he would turn a branch into a coal lamp, so that they would know where to go in the dark woods. It was like the street lamps in the Muggle community. Although the woods were very dark, they could still see clearly with these coal lamps. This is a great idea. Hugo looked back at the coal lamps in the woods. Praise me when we get out. Maureen's feeling of uneasiness became stronger and stronger. What they didn't realize was that the first coal lamp that Maureen had conjured up at the beginning had been quietly extinguished. Chapter 206 The Man with the Axe. The woods were terribly quiet, with only the creaking footsteps of Maureen and the other 2 making noises. Maureen and Ran whispered. What's wrong? Are you scared? Maureen asked. And Ran shook his head. No, I feel like I'm walking back again. Maureen stopped and said, Are you sure? With a white light above them, Ran pointed to a crooked tree in front and said, I remember you marked this crooked tree just now. Impossible. There are no kerosene lamps like Maureen's here, right? Hugo looked back. There was a row of kerosene lamps behind them all the way, leading to the distance. Maureen, how long can your magic last? About an hour. The magic I cast is relatively crude. Maureen said. The more focused a magic is, the longer it will last. In order to save time, Maureen just hurriedly cast a simple transformation. That's not bad, we've only been walking for less than 10 minutes. Hugo said. But Maureen was startled. He stepped on the branch and touched the branch of the crooked tree in front of him. His face became serious. And Ran is right. There's still some magic left here. Maureen shone a light on the branch. He could clearly feel the traces of magic he left on it. He had undoubtedly cast magic here. Hugo was surprised. So we have been spinning in the same place. Maureen nodded. I'm afraid so. He shone the light source deep into the woods in front. The visibility of this light source was not high. The surroundings seemed to be swallowed by the thick darkness. The light source could not penetrate too far. There was also some damp miasma in the woods, which made the vision more obstructed. He jumped forward and found the footprints of the three of them on a muddy moss in front. We are really spinning in the same place. This forest should have been cast with some magic. Maureen said in a deep voice. Hugo broke a branch and said, then we can only try plan B, right? Do we have a plan B? And Ran asked curiously. Hugo smiled and gestured with his wand. This plan is relatively simple. As long as I cast a spell casually, someone from the Ministry of Magic will come to trouble me. They will only send you a letter, right? Maureen knew the rules of the Ministry of Magic. No one would come here to find him. At most, they would send an owl to warn him. But my mother will know. She works at the Ministry of Magic and will come over and scold me immediately. Hugo looked at the sky and suddenly became distressed. Oh no. I forgot. It's night now. She should be off work. I guess she won't know until she goes to work tomorrow. So we have to stay here overnight. And Ran asked with some concern. No, we will find a way out. Maureen glanced at the woods in front of him inadvertently. At this moment, he saw a figure walking slowly in the thin fog in front of him. The figure was very blurry and he couldn't see the specific appearance. It was as if he suddenly appeared from the air. Maureen hadn't seen this person just now. That person is. Did you see that person? Maureen pointed at the figure that suddenly appeared and asked. Who did you see? Hugo and Ran looked in the direction that Maureen pointed in confusion. But Maureen saw that the man had walked into the darkness and disappeared from his sight. I didn't see it. Was it Marjorie? Hey. Teacher Marjorie, are you there? Hugo shouted loudly. No one answered, and the woods were still silent. Let's follow him. He was just in front of us. We should be able to catch up with him. Maureen waved to Hugo and ran, then climbed up the steep mountain road and walked quickly towards the figure he had seen just now. He didn't dare to be too reckless this time. Nor did he run too fast so that Hugo and Ran could catch up. Soon he saw the figure again. The figure in front of him turned a corner in the woods and disappeared at the end of a weedy path. It's right there. Follow me closely and don't fall behind. Maureen walked towards the path ahead. But I didn't see anything. Hugo stretched his neck to look at the end of the path in front. This path was very difficult to walk on. The stones were bumpy and the ground was covered with moss. Hugo accidentally fell again. Ah. What bad luck. Are you okay? Maureen stopped and pulled Hugo up. Fortunately, I should wear a pair of more non-slip shoes next time. Hugo complained. Maureen waved his wand and turned Hugo's shoes into hiking shoes. He also changed his own and Anran's shoes. The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar. I forgot. I should have done this a long time ago. Hugo jumped twice on the spot. Hurry up, follow us first. If there's someone in this woods, maybe we can ask for directions. Maureen thought that this was a tourist attraction. Maybe the person in front was a forest ranger in the scenic area, or a mountaineer. No matter who it was better to find an adult than 3 10-year-old children groping blindly. They had already walked to the end of the path where the figure disappeared, but Maureen found that there was no road in front of them. There was only a piece of strong blunt-leaved grass growing horizontally. I just saw a person disappear in this place. It's strange. Why did he disappear? Maureen stared at the dark woods in front of him and couldn't help but fall into deep thought. Could it be a ghost? And Ran asked in a low voice, I heard that some ghosts can eat people. Maureen and Hugo looked at each other, and Hugo laughed. Ghosts don't eat people. There are ghosts in our school, such as a ghost whose head was almost broken off. Ah. Then aren't you afraid? And Ran opened her eyes wide. She was born a Muggle, and ghosts were legend to her. Don't be afraid, Anran. Maureen pointed his wand at the light source in the air, letting it float to the front to explore the way, and then explained, "There is nothing to be afraid of ghosts. They are harmless to us. Of course, there may be some ghosts who like to play tricks on people, but we are wizards and don't need to be afraid of them." Maureen stepped carefully on the blunt-leaved grass in front of him, and found that the road was not easy to walk on. He retracted his foot, and the light source in front of him slowly flew back, illuminating the dark woods along the way. There was nothing strange over there. He looked up the slope again, and then was slightly stunned. The figure was actually on the slope. The man was wearing long suspender jeans, a pair of rain boots on his feet, a straw hat with a broken mouth, and an axe in his hand. With the help of the weak light, Maureen saw that there was still bright red blood on the axe. Maureen gasped, not only because the man was holding a blood-stained axe, but also because the way he walked was very wrong. The slope was very steep, almost at a 90-degree angle to the ground, but he stepped on it step by step, as if he was walking on flat ground, as if he was standing on a steep slope. Ordinary people could not do this at all. "Did you see it? It's this man." Maureen turned around and whispered. But when he turned around, there was no sign of Hugo and Anran. Not only that, the man in front of him holding the bloody axe seemed to have heard Maureen's words and slowly turned around. Chapter 207 You're floating. The moment the man with the blood axe turned around, Maureen was startled, because he found that the man's eyes were flashing brown light, just like the weirdos he saw in the Muggle Opera House that day. Maureen also saw a very strange phenomenon in this forest. Not only was the man with the blood axe walking on a steep slope, but there were also a dozen people standing on the tree trunks. They walked along the tree trunks to the top of the tree, and their bodies were at a 90-degree angle to the vertically growing trees, as if they were using the tree trunks as flat ground. There were even some people standing upside down on the branches, hanging there, chatting with each other, and some people sitting on the branches like normal people, as if they were thinking about something. No matter who they were, their eyes were shining without exception. The light ball that Maureen had just summoned also disappeared, and the surroundings became dark, filled with an indescribable atmosphere. It was hard to say what it felt like, which made Maureen feel a little depressed, and it seemed very light. He even had a feeling that he could also walk on the inclined steep slope and on the tree trunks like these people in front of him. The man had a messy beard, a strong nose, and a scar on his face. He looked a little tired. He walked towards Maureen, frowned slightly, and then swung the axe towards Maureen. Maureen was startled. When he was about to cast magic to resist, he found that the man just chopped the axe into the blunt-leaved grass in front of Maureen. A three-headed snake appeared there at some point. It's not easy to be bitten by a three-headed snake. You'd better be careful. The brown-eyed man chopped off one of the heads of the three-headed snake. The snake panicked and disappeared into the grass with the remaining two heads. Such a young child, tut-tut. The brown-eyed man pulled the axe out of the ground and looked at Maureen. His eyes seemed a little pitiful, which made Maureen confused. Where is this place? Is it some kind of illusion magic? Maureen asked. The brown-eyed man did not answer Maureen directly, but said in confusion, "You are the same as us." After a moment, he shook his head and said, "You are different from us." I have heard this sentence once before. Maureen frowned. Last time in the Muggle Opera House, he also heard the man hanging upside down on the ceiling say such a confusing sentence. "It's dark, you should go back, and I want to go back too." The brown-eyed man had turned around and walked from the slope to a tree, then walked up slowly on the trunk. He carried the axe on his shoulder. The axe blade still had the blood of the three-headed snake. The blood dripped down, but not on the ground where Maureen was standing, but on the trunk under the man's feet. Many people standing on the treetops also looked at the sky, and began to walk along the branches one after another, and soon disappeared in the woods, as if they were in a hurry to go home. Wait a minute, where's this place? Maureen wanted to find out what was going on. He ran forward a few steps and found that he was standing on the slope without any obstacles. He felt a little strange and couldn't help but stretch out his feet to try to step on the tree trunk. This time Maureen felt that the sky seemed to tilt a little. He actually stood on the tree trunk with both feet. This feeling was very strange, as if the tree trunk was the ground and the center of gravity was all transferred to the tree trunk. "I like this magic," Maureen exclaimed. Last Christmas, he and his grandfather sat on the ceiling to eat dinner. He had seen the inverted magic before, but it was not easy to perform such a large-scale magic. At that time, Alton could only barely perform magic on the roof of the living room, but it seemed that a lot of such magic was performed in this forest. But before he took 2 steps, someone suddenly grabbed his shoulder. Before he could react, he felt a gravity coming and then fell to the ground. Maureen, are you okay? Hugo quickly helped Maureen up from the ground. It hurts. Maureen grimaced while touching his butt. He bumped into a protruding tree root, and his tailbone was numb. He asked again, what happened to me just now? You floated. I floated. Yes, I floated. Did you perform some weightless magic? Hugo asked with interest. I saw you floating in the air just now. I was worried that you would float to the sky, so I quickly pulled you down. But I was standing on a tree just now. Maureen turned his head and was stunned for a moment. There was no tree in front of him. He clearly remembered that he was standing on a tree, like the man with the axe, but how did he float? You didn't stand on any tree, you were clearly floating. Hugo said very confidently. Yes, you suddenly raised your foot and stepped on the air, floating like a balloon. Unran nodded beside him. Maureen frowned and spread his hands helplessly. Okay, I may have drifted. After a while, Maureen pointed to the lush trees around him and asked again, didn't you see some people on the top of the tree? No, we only saw you all the time. Hugo said. He didn't know how to explain this to Hugo. He guessed that he was really trapped by some illusion. He looked up at the forest that covered the sky and found that the light ball he had just cast was still floating in the air and had not disappeared. At this time, the feeling of uneasiness around him had gradually faded, and the chirping of insects sounded in the forest again, as if the night had suddenly become lively, which was completely opposite to the silence just now. The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar. There were also many people calling in the forest in the distance, including Maggie's voice. It seemed that Maggie had also called the security guards of the scenic area to look for Maureen and the other 3 in this forest. It's them. Great. We don't have to spend the night here. Hugo breathed a sigh of relief. Although Maureen had a lot of questions in his mind, he temporarily suppressed them. It was not safe for the 3 of them to stay in the woods, so they planned to think about it after returning. The magic here seems to have failed. I'll try to apparition again. Hold on to me. Maureen waved his wand and restored all the coal lamps behind him to branches. It should work this time, right? Hugo yawned. I won't be beheaded, right? Shut up, Granger, hurry up. Maureen grabbed Rain and Hugo and disappeared into the air in a blink of an eye. Puff. The river behind them was gurgling. Many people on the riverbank were shining flashlights, and many people were shouting the names of the 3 of them, sounding very anxious. Success? Great, let me see what's missing. It doesn't matter if a hair's missing, but other parts must be there. Hugo touched his nose, pulled his ears, and touched a mysterious part in a serious manner, and breathed a sigh of relief. Let's go tell Teacher Julie and ask them to notify those who went into the mountains to come back. And Rand said with some guilt. Maureen and the other 2 hurriedly ran towards the people with flashlights and soon found Julie. Julie looked very anxious. Seeing Maureen and the other 2 running over intact, she breathed a sigh of relief. Are you 3 okay? Are you injured? Do you want to see a doctor? Julie nervously checked the 3 of them from head to toe. We are fine, Teacher Julie. I'm sorry. It's all my fault. I got lost in the woods and they found me. And Rand said with her head down. It's good that you are okay. We can talk about other things later. I'll call Marjorie and the others to come back. Oh, by the way, Officer Ferguson, please tell the Bureau not to send a helicopter. The 3 of them have been found. I'm sorry to have caused you trouble. Julie turned and said to a man in police uniform. Helicopter? Cool. I heard from Professor Charles that it's an excavator, right? Hugo asked with interest, are you planning to flatten the mountain and come to us? SHH, don't talk nonsense if you don't understand. Helicopters are not excavators. Maureen lowered his voice and gestured to Hugo. The excavators are called fighters. Oh, that's it. Hugo suddenly realized. Chapter 208, Forgetfulness Spell. On the way back to the campsite, Marjorie and Julie were about to ask what happened to them, but Marjorie quietly cast a forgetfulness spell on them. Good, good, you know how to save yourself. You did a good job this time. Keep up the good work. Marjorie looked a little distracted, mumbling compliments, and had forgotten what question to ask. I will let everyone learn from you. You have to keep it up. Julie also praised. And Rand looked at Maureen with a confused look on her face. She thought she was going to be scolded, but she was praised for no reason. She asked in a low voice, "What did you do to them?" "It's just forgetting their memories. But this is the first time I used this spell on someone. I wanted to tamper with their memories, but it takes time to implant false memories. Let's do it this way for now. I also cast a confusion spell. Now they only remember that the three of us did good things." Maureen put away his wand and took the scenic cable car back to the camping site on the top of the mountain. There were other teachers here to help take care of those students. When Horace and others saw Ran and the other two coming back, they immediately strode over and said, "Teacher, we are all worried about this freak. She also pushed me into the water. Don't you think she should be punished?" Horace was still annoyed about falling into the river. He thought it must be Ran's revenge before she left, so the first thing Ran did when she came back was that he couldn't wait to see Ran get punished. Punishment? Oh no, Horace, we should praise Ran. She did the right thing. Teacher Julie gave Ran a thumbs up. What? Horace was stunned. He said hurriedly, "But Teacher Julie, it was this freak who pushed me into the water. Can we just let it go? You know, everyone knows that she is a freak. Many people have seen it." What? Horace hadn't finished speaking when he suddenly felt something blocking his mouth. He pinched his throat and coughed hard, and then a dung beetle came out of his mouth. "Ah! Why are you still eating dung beetles?" Hugo shouted in surprise. Many children in the distance ran over and saw Horace spitting out dung beetles from his mouth. They were frightened and couldn't help but retreat away from Horace. "No, it's not me. I didn't eat any dung beetles," Horace hurriedly explained, but the other children didn't believe what he said and talked about it. Horace ate a dung beetle in his mouth. Could he be a dung beetle? A boy wearing glasses with thick bulletproof glass said in fear. "It must be, he's a dung beetle." Another little girl with two pigtails also shouted. "Shut up. I'm not. This dung beetle, this freak framed me." Horace hurriedly defended himself, but it was useless. No one believed what he said and moved away from Horace. Horace's face turned red and he looked very angry. "Isn't this a bad idea?" Ran whispered. "It's nothing bad, it's just a small punishment. Let him also taste the taste of being isolated." Maureen put the wand back into his pocket. This kind of prank punishment was considered light compared to the bullying of Ran by Horace. Marjorie and Julie quickly organized everyone to wash the fish they caught, and then taught everyone how to grill fish in the camping area. Hugo grilled the perch directly into charcoal, which was inedible. Maureen could only take out his wand and cast a transformation spell on the grilled fish. "Why is the fish I grilled not as delicious as the one I cook at home?" Hugo said distressedly. "If you listen to Marjorie and don't grill it for so long, maybe you can swallow it." After taking a bite of Hugo's grilled fish, Maureen felt that she had lost her appetite. "Here, my mother taught me how to grill fish." Ran handed two grilled crispy fish to Maureen and Hugo. Maureen took a bite and felt that the appetite that Hugo had closed was reopened. "This grilled fish is really good. What magic did you use?" Hugo's eyes lit up. "Magic is not omnipotent, Hugo, this is our real cooking skills." Maureen did not learn how to cook magic. He might be able to make grilled fish with attractive colors, but it would definitely look good but not delicious. In the evening, Marjorie reallocated tents for everyone. Because boys and girls worked together to set up tents during the day, they needed to separate men and women when they lived at night, and the two groups exchanged with each other. Hugo's group exchanged with Maureen's group. Hugo and Maureen slept in one tent, and Lucy and Ran lived in another tent. Lucy was very reluctant, so Maureen could only secretly cast the forgetfulness spell to make Lucy forget what she saw in the afternoon. "Honestly, I used too much magic today." Maureen closed the tent and arranged the pillows and sheets. Wizards should not use magic on muggles casually. Why bother? What a 10-year-old child says cannot be trusted. What you should care about is not to let Marjorie and Julie remember anything. Hugo held a big fan. It was very hot on the tent. He said again, "Is there any magic that can lower the temperature?" Maureen also felt a little hot. It was July and the temperature was a little high. He used his wand to touch two thick cardboards. The two cardboards automatically floated on the tent and fanned them. "Great, I remember Professor Flitwick taught this spell. Although I forgot what it is very effective." Hugo yawned happily. The latest novels are first published on the 6th-9th book bar. It's the disintegration charm, which makes objects move in a certain pattern. You really should learn some spells. Maureen conjured up several pieces of ice and placed them in the corner of the tent to cool it down. After he lay down, He recalled what happened in the woods just now. He told Hugo about what he saw at night and what he saw at the opera house that day. Maybe some illusion magic. Last time I heard that some illusion magic can make people see Voldemort. Hugo guessed. Is that nightmare candy? I remember they sell it in Hogsmeade Village. Maureen shook his head. The feeling was very real, not like a nightmare. But then again, I also felt that it was very strange there at night. Although I didn't see the man with the axe you mentioned, there was something wrong with the area. We were actually spinning in circles and couldn't hear any other sounds for a while. Hugo lay down with his legs crossed, thinking for a moment and said, "Do you think it could be the inferi or something? You know, some dark wizards like to use dead bodies to cause trouble." Inferi? I don't remember the inferi talking. Maybe there's something here that has been cast with dark magic, but we just ignored it. Maureen felt that this matter was very likely related to the place in the Muggle Opera House. 3 chapters will be updated today to make up for 3,500 recommendation votes. Chapter 209 Farm. So can people really fly around on a broomstick? The next day, Unran seemed to be in a much better mood. Perhaps because she knew she was not a unique freak, her personality became more cheerful. Of course. It's called Quidditch, a very exciting sport, and Maureen is the main player of Gryffindor. Hugo said carelessly. What about you? And Ren asked. I'm the main lecturer of the whole school, and I'm even more powerful. Hugo puffed out his chest. Yes, it's amazing. Maureen climbed onto the school bus, and the 3 of them sat in the last row as usual. Today, Marjorie and Julie were going to take them to visit the farm in the town and learn about farm knowledge. Maureen also introduced the 4 colleges to Unran, what potions classes, what the Ministry of Magic is, and also introduced many interesting shops in Diagon Alley. What if my mother doesn't believe it? Unran hesitated. They will send someone to explain the situation to your parents next month, don't worry. Maureen threw his school bag at his feet. Although you won't be forced to go to school, it's better for you to be in Hogwarts than in a Muggle school. Your parents know this very well. Maureen looked at Horace in the carriage. Because Horace spit out a dung beetle last night, no one dared to sit with him today. He sat in 2 seats alone in anger and beat up a boy who talked about him. The bus soon drove into a small town at the foot of the mountain. Next to the town was a farm. Looking around the field, green waves of wheat were swaying in the wind, strong cows were basking in the sun on the grass, and tractors were driving in the fields. Do wizards have farms too? And Ren asked. Yes, wizards' farms are richer. For example, you can see watermelons and pumpkins growing on big trees. Oh, yes, watermelons may be taller than people. Maureen was no stranger to farms. He had been to the farm in Hogsmeade several times last time. So you also use tractors to plow the fields. Tractor? Oh, you mean this bulky thing? So it's called a tractor. Maureen looked at the blue tractor with big wheels curiously, and then shook her head. We only need simple tools like shovels and rakes. Isn't that backward? It's okay. Those tools will work automatically. As long as you recite a spell, they can plow the fields much faster than this bulky machine. Maureen followed everyone along the farm path and saw a scarecrow fixed on a tree. She said, Our scarecrow can move. I have always wondered how a scarecrow that can't move can scare away red-haired sparrows. Really? Scarecrows can move too? How do they move? Unran is very interested in magic. Yesterday, she followed Maureen to the treetops to watch the sunset. She no longer doubted magic. To be honest, Unran, when you enter Hogwarts in the future, you will find that things that move are normal, and things that don't move are strange. Maureen said. The most classic thing is the painting. For Maureen and Hugo, who come from wizard families, it is normal for the painting to move, and it is strange if it does not move. The farmer who received them, Mr. Bartley, enthusiastically introduced to everyone how to use machines to milk the cows on the farm. Muggle farms have achieved technological development. When milking, the cows are driven into a factory building, which is surrounded by fences. Each cow stands in a grid. There will be a lot of machines that give Maureen and Hugo a headache. The whole factory is rumbling with machines, mixed with a mooing of cows, which is very noisy. It's really interesting, isn't it? I never knew that milk was squeezed out like this before. Unran was very interested. How do wizards milk milk? I don't know about this, I only know how to drink milk. Hugo spread his hands and said sincerely. I have seen it, but there is no need to go through so much trouble. Maureen yawned. The cows don't need to be driven into such a crowded place. They are only responsible for eating grass, and there will be a bucket flying around on the grass to milk them. Maureen and Hugo were not as interested in farm matters as those Muggle children, but their trip was not in vain, and they also learned a lot of Muggle knowledge. Maybe I can get an excellent in Muggle studies next semester, and my mother will be happy. Think about it. I already know what the tractor is used for, Hugo said confidently. Really? What is it used for? Maureen smiled evilly. It is used for. Hugo touched his chin and frowned. It is used for. Don't tell me, I almost thought of it. Lunch was eaten at a restaurant called Adams in the farm town. The restaurant was decorated very warmly, and the whole style was full of Scottish style. The owner of the restaurant was called Adams, a very hospitable middle-aged man. He arranged seats for everyone and invited everyone to taste freshly squeezed iced strawberry juice for free. I like this restaurant. Hugo found that the Muggle food was not bad. Although he had not yet remembered what the tractor was used for, he had a good appetite and ate 2 servings. Marjorie took them to rest in the woods and grass next to the town farm. Maureen and the others chose a green cloth mat and lay under the tree next to them. The lazy sunlight shone through the leaves on their bodies, and the breeze in the afternoon made them feel very comfortable. Anrin couldn't wait to know more about wizards. She asked a lot of questions, and Maureen answered them patiently. Many people were lying under the tree for an afternoon nap. Maureen stretched out of boredom, and her eyes inadvertently glanced at the small road and the farm in the distance, and suddenly she uttered a light exclamation. The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar. What's wrong? Hugo asked. Sweet, why is he here too? Maureen pointed at a hurried figure on the path in the distance. The guy was wearing a white shirt and Muggle sunglasses, and was looking around as he walked towards the town. Oh, does he live here? Hugo also recognized him. Sweet's outfit was also very rustic, especially the Muggle sunglasses, which looked particularly strange on an 11-year-old. It was obviously not like he was a Muggle. Who is he? Anrin asked curiously. He's our roommate. Do you want to say hello? Hugo thought for a while. If he lives here, maybe we can go to his house as a guest. Let's go, we're free at noon anyway. Maureen glanced at Marjorie and Julie. Julie was sleeping on the grass, and Marjorie was playing with her phone. No one noticed them. They quietly walked around and ran towards Sweet. Anrin followed him. For her, only Maureen and Hugo would not reject her, so she trusted them more. Hey! Sweet! Maureen shouted. Sweet stopped and turned around warily, looking very serious. When he found that it was Maureen and Hugo, his expression relaxed slightly. It's you. Why are you here? Sweet asked. We are here to attend this summer camp, you know, to learn Muggle knowledge. Maureen pointed to the town in front. Do you live here? Sweet shook his head. I don't live here. Then what are you doing here? Hugo asked puzzled. Are you here to attend this summer camp too? I'm not attending the summer camp. I'm here for an important matter. Sweet said. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 210 Fire. Important things? What important things? Maureen asked curiously. Sweet has always been a strange person. Even now, Maureen still doesn't know all of Sweet's secrets, and doesn't even know where he lives. Hugo's calling him a mysterious man is not groundless. Sweet didn't answer Maureen directly. He looked at Anran and asked, who is she? A Muggle. Anran, we found a new wizard. She should go to Hogwarts this year. Maureen explained. Anran looked at Sweet nervously. This was the 3rd wizard she had met. Sweet nodded slightly, and then said, this matter has nothing to do with you. You should go back quickly. I have something else to do, so I'm leaving first. Your matter is related to magic, right? Maureen saw a wand in Sweet's pocket. Can you use magic outside the school? Sweet blocked his wand for a moment. No, don't ask. This matter is very dangerous. Great. Hugo snapped his fingers. I always like danger. Let's go. Are we going to fight Dementors? Don't be ridiculous. This matter is much more serious than Dementors. I'm leaving. Sweet's expression was very serious. He didn't want to explain anything more, turned around and walked quickly towards the town. He's really weird, isn't he? Hugo looked at Sweet's back. What do you think he's going to do? Maureen didn't know either. He couldn't figure out Sweet, who could be favored by a cunning man like Ping. How could he be an ordinary person? But Maureen himself forgot one thing. Now Ping's target is him. However, before Sweet had gone far, there was a sudden explosion in the town, as if something had exploded, and a thick smoke billowed into the sky. Then many people screamed in fear, and many people ran out of the house to the street, wondering what had happened. Sweet paused, and then ran quickly to the scene of the incident. Maureen and Hugo looked at each other, a little surprised. Explosion? Is it such a coincidence? Hugo asked in surprise. What a coincidence. Go and see. Maureen ran to the town at full speed. The noise was too loud, and he didn't know what had happened. When they ran to the town, they found that many people had gathered at the scene, many of whom were shouting something, and some were holding their mobile phones to call the police. The scene was in chaos. Maureen and Hugo squeezed through the crowd together, looking at the house in front of them with thick smoke, and were shocked. This was where they had lunch at noon. At this time, the restaurant was covered with flames and burning everywhere. Some places were blown into pieces and collapsed. Why did it explode? Yes. Is it a gas leak? Is there anyone inside? The owner of the restaurant is still inside. People in the town were shouting loudly, but the flames were too big and no one dared to rush in. Some people had already pulled the water pipes used to water the flowers on their lawns and started to put out the fire, but the flames were too fierce and it was not enough to put out the fire. Sweet was in the crowd. He went around to the back of the restaurant and rushed into the fire while the smoke was rolling. Hugo, Enron, you wait here. I'll go in and take a look. Maureen instructed. While everyone's attention was on the fire, Maureen disappeared directly into the air. Maureen, wait, the fire is too big, you will get into trouble if you go. Enron shouted anxiously. He won't be in trouble, at most he will be hit. Don't worry, we have encountered more dangerous situations. Hugo was very calm. He knew Maureen's ability. Maureen's spells were comparable to those of a 5th grade student. Flames were not a problem for Maureen at all. Maureen had already appeared in the fire scene. As soon as he entered the fire scene, he found something very wrong. The flames here were not ordinary flames, but flames created by magic. Turbulent waves. Maureen swung his wand, and a strong stream of water sprayed out from the tip of the wand. The water covered a blazing restaurant, but it was evaporated by the flames in the blink of an eye. The magic here was more powerful than he imagined. There are wizards who would do something here. Damn it. Maureen found that he couldn't extinguish these flames. Not only that, these flames also rushed towards him. Flames immediately surged out of his body, confronting these flames and separating them. Although his magic ability is much stronger than before, he still can't use that kind of terrifying flame at will without the help of Dragon Flame and Tycold Agent, otherwise he would consider using that kind of flame to devour the flames here. The figure appears. He quickly used an apparition spell and found that 3 figures appeared in the fire scene. One was the restaurant owner Adams, who was hiding in a corner on the 2nd floor of the restaurant, not knowing how to cross the fire. In addition to Maureen, there were 2 other people in the restaurant on the 1st floor. One was Sweet, but he couldn't recognize the other figure. The latest novels are published on the 69th book bar. This person had a cowboy hat on his head and wore a pair of Muggle sunglasses like Sweet. His arms were bare. Maureen vaguely saw that there seemed to be a tattoo on the man's shoulder, which looked like a big bird. Stop. Sweet rushed towards the stranger. But the wizard made a strange hoarse voice. You still want to catch me? Little brat, are you looking for death? The ghost fire is fierce. Swish. All the flames turned into pitch black color, and these black flames turned into bats and pounced on Sweet. Sweet rolled to the side and stretched out his wand to cast a coma spell on the wizard. Maureen frowned. It turned out that this guy was the arsonist. He wanted to help Sweet, but he saw Adams, the owner of the restaurant on the 2nd floor. He shouted to Sweet, Sweet, be careful. I'll go help Mr. Adams first. What are you doing here? This has nothing to do with you. Sweet also saw Maureen, but Maureen disappeared in front of Sweet with a puff sound, and appeared in Adams' room on the 2nd floor in a blink of an eye. There was thick smoke inside. Adams kept coughing with a wet towel covering his mouth. Some parts of his body were burned. It didn't look good. He tried to rush out again and again, but was blocked by the fire. Are you okay? Mr. Adams. Maureen hurriedly helped Adams up. Why are you here, kid? No, this is for you. Cover your mouth and don't inhale the smoke. Adams saw a child appear next to him, and became anxious, and hurriedly handed his wet towel to Maureen. "You hold it yourself, I'll take you out first." Maureen grabbed Adams' hand and wanted to wrap it away directly. Adams was an adult with a slightly fat body. Maureen found that he couldn't apparate away directly with him. The weight of the person he could apparate with was limited. He failed after trying it once. "What are you doing? Be careful, come to me quickly, don't get hurt." Adams was still thinking about pulling Maureen into his arms and helping Maureen block the debris falling from the ceiling, but Maureen threw out a stream of clear water and soaked Adams from head to toe. You. Adams looked at the wand in Maureen's hand and widened his eyes. "Forget about that, come this way." Maureen shouted. Chapter 211 Collapse of Fire. Maureen could apparate with Hugo and Enron, but he couldn't with Adams. He could only block the flames in front of him and clear a path, but the floor had collapsed, blocking the way forward. "Window. Mr. Adams." Maureen pointed at the floor, and a stone soon appeared on the floor to fill the big hole. They stepped on it, but the window was also on fire, especially with a bookcase in front. The flames were burning particularly fiercely. He directly fired an explosive spell, blowing a big hole in the window. "Jump down. Quick." Maureen conjured a stream of water in front of the hole, and the water had condensed into ice, like a slide. Adams hesitated for a moment, stepped on the slide, and slid down to the ground, but he was too heavy, and Maureen's ice could not bear Adams' weight. It broke with a click, and he fell from midair. One after another. Maureen quickly cast a rebound spell in the air, which bounced Adams from the ground like a ball and then fell down, rolling into the bushes. After doing all this, he disappeared from the second floor and reappeared on the first floor. Sweet and the wizard in the cowboy hat were still confronting each other. "Where is he?" Sweet shouted angrily. The firelight reflected on Sweet's face. He seemed to know the wizard in front of him. "Who is there?" Maureen looked at Sweet in confusion. Sweet kept shooting spells at the wizard, but the wizard dodged them one by one. "Little brat, I don't have time to tangle with you." The wizard in the cowboy hat took out a strange stone the size of a palm from his pocket. The stone was very strange and exuded a breathtaking aura. He touched the stone with his wand, and Sweet suddenly exclaimed and shouted to Maureen, "Get out of here." Maureen was just wondering what the stone was for, and then there seemed to be a huge suction force coming from the wizard's hand, and all the pieces of furniture that were on fire flew up and rushed towards the wizard, and the wizard's body seemed to be a huge whirlpool. All the fragments were spinning around him, and the whirlpool was spinning faster and faster, pulling the things in the entire restaurant. Not only that, Maureen felt as if he was also caught by the force, and his body flew towards the wizard involuntarily. What the hell? Maureen found that Sweet was also out of control. He immediately disappeared from the spot with apparition, grabbed Sweet who was flying towards the stone, and then disappeared again in the fire. The two fell into the grass next to Adams, and the fire behind them suddenly made a noisy and sharp whistling sound, as if something was violently colliding with each other, rumbling. Maureen got up from the ground and turned his head to see that the restaurant had been burned beyond recognition. The center of the fire was like a huge whirlpool. All the burning debris was rolled into the center, and the flames shrank inward. The stone lawns and trash cans on the ground also flew into the fire and were constantly compressed together. The onlookers ran out in panic, frightened by the strange flames. The fire trucks had already arrived, and the firefighters holding the fire hoses were also stunned by the scene in front of them. They had never seen anyone's house catch fire so strangely. A good rural restaurant was collapsing from all directions, as if something was violently squeezed together, making all kinds of crackling and twisting sounds, which were sour and unbearable and frightening. In just a moment, the huge restaurant had become a huge stone ball with a diameter of only 5 meters. The things that made up this huge stone ball were all kinds of bits and pieces of the restaurant: steel, cement, and broken stones, burnt tables, chairs, and bedboards, and wood, melted and twisted glass. The stone in that person's hand could produce such a terrifying suction force that it destroyed a restaurant directly. The flames gradually died down, but this huge and strange ball shocked everyone. They had never seen such a strange fire scene in their lives. "What is going on?" someone asked everyone's thoughts. "The end of the world. The sign of the end of the world." An old woman with yellow teeth shouted loudly. "Shut up. Mrs. Chris, stop preaching your evil cult theory." A middle-aged man scolded. "Do you think this is a gas explosion? Or a terrorist attack?" "I don't know. What about Adams? Is that poor guy okay?" Everyone on the Muggle side was speculating on the cause of the explosion. The police had already rushed over and set up a cordon. Maureen grabbed Sweet in the bushes and asked, "What's going on? Who is this person?" "It has nothing to do with you." Sweet looked very annoyed. "Of course it has nothing to do with me, but that person almost burned a Muggle to death." Maureen frowned. Sweet didn't say anything, but his face was tense. There was also a burn mark on his arm. Hugo and Ran also ran over and asked, "Are you okay? What happened?" "Oh, Mr. Adams, you look very bad." Adams' skin was burned and peeled off in many places, and the wounds were charred. These burns were very serious. He sat on the ground gasping for breath, his face was pale, and there were beads of sweat on his forehead. The pain made his consciousness a little blurred. Maureen didn't continue to ask Sweet, but turned his head to check Adams's injuries, holding the wand with some hesitation. "Heal the wound." Maureen pointed his wand at Adam's arm, but his spell only flashed and disappeared, and Adam's wound did not heal at all. "I haven't learned any healing spells, I only know this one taught by Professor Flitwick. If this spell doesn't work, then Muggles will definitely not be able to heal, and he must be treated and sent to St. Mungo's Hospital." Maureen turned his head and asked Sweet, "Have you learned how to treat burns?" Sweet shook his head sullenly. Let me try." And Ran whispered beside him. Maureen looked at Ran and said in surprise, "Can you heal magic burns? The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar." "I don't know, but I healed my mother's arm scratch before, so I think I can." Ran carefully lifted Adam's arm, and a faint white light emanated from her fingers. The light covered Adam's wound and penetrated into his skin little by little. Adams took a breath of cold air in pain, but then his breathing slowly stabilized, and the magic burns on his arm began to heal. "Huh? Is it okay?" Adams opened his eyes. Although he looked a little weak, the originally charred wounds on his arms had disappeared unknowingly. Maureen and Hugo looked at each other, quite surprised. "You are actually a natural healing magus," Maureen said in surprise. "Healing magus? What a strange name." And Rand said shyly, "I don't know what it means. There are many special people among wizards, such as Parseltongue and Dragontongue. Some are born metamorphmagus, some are born animagus, and can turn into various animals at will. Some are born to heal many magical scars. You don't know spells and you can heal magic without a wand, so you belong to the healing magus," Maureen explained. "Can people really turn into various animals at will?" Ran didn't care if she was a healing magus. On the contrary, she was more interested in being able to turn into an animal. This is very rare. Many wizards can turn into a specific animal through learning, but there is a type of person who can turn into multiple animals at will, not just one, but very rare. I haven't seen it yet, even rarer than Metamorphmagus. Metamorphmagus can turn into anyone without using Polyjuice Potion, which is also very rare," Maureen said casually. Professor Kane had talked about these things in the Transfiguration class. He always knew more about magic than others. For example, there are several healing mags in St. Mungo's Hospital, all of whom are top-notch senior healers who can cure many magical diseases that ordinary healers are helpless to treat. Most people who want to become healers learn through acquired learning, and people like Ran who are born with this ability are very enviable. Are you also such special people? Ran asked again. Oh, we are similar. Maureen is the never-restless mags, Sweet is the mysterious and cold mags, and I am the glib and good at eating mags. By the way, Mr. Adams, it's a pity that your restaurant burned down. I like your food, especially the charcoal grilled beef brisket. Hugo joked beside him. Maureen ignored the frivolous Hugo. He saw that Adams had woken up and asked, Mr. Adams, are you okay? He thought that once he was sure that Adams was okay, he would cast a forgetfulness spell on Adams to make him forget these things. After all, there are many things that Muggles should not know. I'm fine. I thought I was doomed. Fortunately, you are here. Oh, you are students of Hogwarts, right? What Maureen didn't expect was that Adams actually knew about the existence of Hogwarts. Here is the meaning of magus. In Latin, magus means wizard, and animagus is animal magus. I feel that there should be more special magus in the wizarding world. Chapter 212 Sweets Matter. Mr. Adams, you. Maureen looked at Adams. Not many people knew about Hogwarts, but Adams didn't even have a wand. He didn't look like a wizard. I'm a squib. Adams let out a long sigh. Sorry, I don't know. Maureen put down his wand. A squib is a person who was born in a wizard family but has no magical ability. If Adams is a squib, then there is no need to cast the forget spell. It's okay, thank you for saving me. Adams stretched his neck to see the restaurant that had been sucked into a ball by magic, and then opened his mouth wide. Who has a grudge against my restaurant? Maureen's eyes fell on Sweet, and Sweet asked Adams, saying in a deep voice, do you know Lucas? Lucas? I don't know. Adams shook his head. Sweet, who is Lucas? Was that Lucas just now? Maureen asked. Sweet was silent for a moment, then nodded. Why are you chasing him? Maureen asked. This has nothing to do with you. It has something to do with these muggles. Especially Mr. Adams, he was attacked. Maureen was annoyed by Sweet's tone. Sweet kept silent for a while before saying, sorry, it's my fault. An apology is not enough. There are so many muggles in the town watching. If it was an ordinary explosion, the gas leak could be explained, but this, Maureen pointed to the huge sphere formed by the collapse of the ruins, you'd better explain the matter clearly. This restaurant would not be twisted like this for no reason. Yet, we can't eat charcoal grilled beef brisket tonight. Hugo interrupted. Unran had healed the burn on Sweet's arm. Sweet said sullenly, the thing in Lucas's hand is very difficult to deal with. All I know is that he escaped by using this method last time. It is a magnet strengthened by magic, which can absorb everything. Sweet looked up at Maureen and continued, any spell will be absorbed by the magnet, and he can only leave by apparition. What is he doing with this dangerous magnet? It was the first time Maureen heard of such a strange magnet. I'm checking. Then how do you know this magnet is here? Maureen asked. The explosion and fire occurred before Sweet arrived. There was a reason why Maureen and Hugo happened to appear here, but it was unreasonable for Sweet to appear here for no reason. I'm not tracking down this magnet, I'm tracking down him. Sweet touched his healed arm and said to Unran, thank you. You're welcome. Unran was very interested in their conversation and listened very curiously. How do you track down Lucas's whereabouts? Maureen asked. This is my own business. Sweet didn't want to answer this question. He stared at Adams and said, but this restaurant must have something he wants, otherwise he wouldn't be here. What is there in my restaurant that he wants? Adams looked particularly confused. I just opened an ordinary restaurant. I don't know this person, and there are no magic items here. Maybe there is, but you just ignored it. Sweet said stiffly. Then who is this Lucas? Maureen asked. A dark wizard. Sweet clenched his fists. He caused the same riot in the community where I live. My sister was affected and is still in a coma. Maureen was stunned for a moment. He never knew about Sweet's family before. I didn't know you had a sister. Maureen knew very little about Sweet. She is not my biological sister, she is a muggle. She treated me as her brother in the orphanage. Sweet's eyes were filled with anger. What happened last month, I didn't know until I came back from school. Maureen and Hugo looked at each other. They didn't know that Sweet grew up in an orphanage. Sweet rarely mentioned these things to them. Huh? You grew up with muggles, why do you still have to take muggle studies? Hugo asked in surprise. I didn't grow up with muggles. I've only been in the orphanage for 2 years. Sweet glanced at Hugo. 2 years. Maureen's heart moved slightly. So, Sweet became an orphan 2 years ago? Sweet didn't seem to want to explain more about his life experience. He said, and this is not a conflict. I just don't want to miss any classes at school. Hugo rolled his eyes. For him, he would be so happy to miss one class. There are actually people who complain that he has too few classes. The Ministry of Magic didn't deal with this matter? I mean, they didn't help treat your sister. Maureen asked. Sweet said angrily, the people in the Ministry of Magic don't care about her at all. They only know how to cover up the truth and make muggles believe that it was a terrorist attack. When I knew about this, a month had passed. My sister had been lying in bed for a month. I didn't know how to find someone from the Ministry of Magic. I tried to treat her with magic myself, but... Did you receive an owl warning from the Ministry of Magic? Hugo was very familiar with this kind of thing. The latest novels are first published on 69shoe.com. Sweet snorted heavily. Did you use magic outside the school just now? Maureen looked at the wand in Sweet's hand. Just now, Sweet had used a lot of magic on the wizard in the fire. Sweet's joints were clenched until they turned wide. If the Ministry of Magic doesn't do anything, I have to do it myself. You don't have to do it yourself. Maureen said straightforwardly, I will help. Sweet glanced at Maureen, his chest rose and fell slightly for a moment, and soon calmed down. "Thank you." Sweet lowered his voice. "Just now in the fire, you saved me." Maureen didn't think so. He would save anyone else. "But it's really strange that you haven't received the talking letter yet." Hugo looked around, trying to find the trace of the owl in the air. "Even if you are protecting yourself, you will receive the letter. Last time, James only secretly slapped a mosquito to death with his wand in the woods, and the annoying letter flew over in less than 2 minutes. The owl of your letter won't get lost, right?" Maureen also felt strange. The efficiency of the Ministry of Magic shouldn't be so low. He stood up and walked towards the big ball sucked by the magnet, and looked carefully. Lucas probably apparated it away long ago. "Can you apparate?" Sweet walked over and asked in a low voice. "You just cast a spell, why didn't you receive a warning letter?" "It's a long story. I'll explain it to you when I have time." Maureen looked at the panicked Muggle crowd. The ambulance was already waiting there, and the police who arrived didn't know how to deal with the situation on the scene. He walked back to Adams, who was sitting on the grass, and said, "Mr. Adams, the staff of the Ministry of Magic may come to you later, but please don't tell us about us, okay?" Maureen gestured with his wand and continued, "I don't want to cause trouble." I understand. Adams moved his arms and said quickly, "I know about the Ministry of Magic. You saved me, and I can't let you get fired." As he was talking, 2 men in suits walked out of the woods over there. Their leather shoes were polished and sparkled in the sun. They were wearing sunglasses, which was quite cool. They walked to the police and showed their ID. Maureen vaguely heard the 2 men saying that they were from the MI6 and were responsible for handling this matter. MI6? Oh my god. Is that the intelligence department where Agent 007 works? Unran exclaimed. They actually exist. I always thought I could only see them in movies. They came so fast. Oh, of course they are fast. Maureen glanced at the 2 men and said disapprovingly, "Those 2 guys are the ones who reversed accidental events. I even know one of them." Chapter 213 Magic and Technology. "You mean you know someone from MI6? Unran exclaimed. She was born a Muggle and her mind hadn't completely turned around yet. "I don't know what MI6 is, Unran. I only know they are fake Muggle police." Maureen knew that in order to get along well with Muggles over the years, many Ministry of Magic staff had received Muggle disguise training. Of course, not everyone understood the Muggle rules. For example, the retired Alton disguised himself very badly. But the 2 people from the Reversal of Contingencies team were dressed in suits and looked like they were real. One of the 2 Ministry of Magic staff was called Anderson. Maureen had seen him once when she went to the Ministry of Magic with Alton. Anderson was using a black flashlight to knock here and there next to the big wall. He was shining the flashlight on the ruins in broad daylight. Many townspeople looked at Anderson's amateur operation with suspicion. What could a flashlight knock out? Could it be a new stupid agent? But Maureen was sure that the flashlight must have a wand hidden. Anderson still didn't understand the work process of Muggle agents. Anderson's partner sneakily walked over and took out a shower head from his pocket. This shower head was no different from the one used by Muggles, but the plastic tube was connected to a transparent glass bottle, which was filled with blue liquid and was bubbling. No, hurry up and find a place to shelter from the rain." Maureen shouted to Unran and others. "What's wrong?" Unran asked in confusion. Hugo also ran away, saying as he ran, "That's the memory erasing potion. They're going to make it rain." Rain. Unran soon knew what rain meant. The wizard quickly took out his wand and knocked on the shower head, which immediately emitted a powerful water column. The water column flew straight up to 50 or 60 meters in the air, and then began to disperse everywhere, like a drizzle, falling on all the Muggles. Each Muggle was watching, but after being drenched by the rain, they suddenly began to look confused, as if they had forgotten what they were doing here. Then everyone turned around, as if they remembered something urgent, and hurriedly started to walk home. Even the police cars and ambulances drove away. Maureen and the others ran to the eaves of the house next door, waiting for the rain to stop. Anderson took out his wand from the flashlight. There was a transparent shield above the heads of both of them, so they were not drenched by the rain. "Is this how they cover up the facts and ignore the Muggles?" Sweet snorted. "The Ministry of Magic has its own set of rules, and their main purpose is to conceal the existence of magic. Hugo and Maureen have become accustomed to the Ministry of Magic's practices." The rain kept falling, covering the entire town. Anderson and his partner talked for a while in the rain. Finally, they waved their wands together, pointing at the big ball that was attracted by the magnet. The big ball quickly began to disintegrate, the steel bars were reconnected, the cement was restored to its original position, and the beams were rebuilt. Soon, the restaurant was restored by their magic. "It's amazing," Unran exclaimed, but she asked puzzledly, "The townspeople who were caught in the rain will lose their memories, so what about the other people who were not caught in the rain? They will see it in the house, right? Don't worry about that. Muggles hiding in the house always have to drink water. They can't avoid it," Maureen said. "Anyway, we can't drink the water or eat the food here for 2 days, otherwise we will forget it." Hugo spread his hands. Maureen originally planned to go out and ask Anderson about the situation, but in the end he didn't go out because he had just cast some magic and was afraid that he wouldn't be able to explain it clearly later. Adams was still standing next to Anderson and was not caught in the rain. He was a witness, and Anderson had to ask him some questions. Sweet looked at Unran and said hesitantly, "You are the healer of mags, so can you help heal my sister?" "I don't know, maybe I can try," Unran said. "Then how do we get there?" "Maureen, should we apparat?" Hugo asked Sweet, "Where's your sister?" "Number 16 Gory Street, Snow Orphanage," Sweet said. Maureen shook her head, "I haven't been there. If I apparat rashly, I'm afraid something will happen. You know, if I apparat to the middle of the road and get hit by a car or appear on top of a muggle's head and step on someone, it's safest unless I can see an accurate building shape or roof or something." And Rand thought for a moment and said, "What exactly is it like? Can we go anywhere? Tell me more clearly, maybe I can use our method. For example, can you go to the live broadcast on TV?" Unran pointed at the TV in the house through the glass in the corridor. Through the glass, Maureen saw a TV in the room playing live news. There was a reporter reporting on the incident of someone trying to commit suicide by jumping into the river on the Merks Bridge. There was a man sitting on the high bridge with a hollow look in his eyes, looking like he had lost hope in life. The female reporter was introducing the situation of the man who is desperate because his company went bankrupt. A crowd of people gathered around him, and a fire truck was coming. Some people were trying to persuade him to come down. Maureen nodded, "I can go to this place." "Why is this guy so desperate?" "Oh no. He's going to jump," Unran exclaimed. Puff. Maureen had disappeared from the spot. Hugo and the others went to the window to watch TV and found that Maureen came out from behind a fat man in blue on the TV. No one knew how he appeared, and no one cared about him. But Maureen looked around and squeezed into the crowd. Then the desperate man struggled on the bridge, seemed to be shouting something, and looked a little confused and a little panicked. The female reporter on TV was reporting, "This is the first scene reporting for you. I am reporter Vina. The man named Samson Owen seems to be in trouble again. He has become quite emotional, but his movements are a bit strange. He seems to want to stand up, but can't. Oh, my God, is he going to take off his pants? The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar." Poof. Maureen reappeared beside Hugo and the others. "What did you do?" Hugo exclaimed. "I just went to the scene and secretly cast a bonding spell to stick his pants to the bridge, and locked his belt, so he can't jump down." Maureen spread his hands. "He should be able to hold on until the firefighters or something come to rescue him." "Cool." Hugo couldn't help but shout, "I must learn how to apparat, too." Unran also looked at Maureen on the news on TV in amazement. "Can magic be used like this? Doesn't this mean that as long as it's live news, you can go to the scene to see it?" The man on TV seemed to be panicking. He couldn't jump down, couldn't stand up, and couldn't untie his belt. This situation scared him. He waved to the crowd, and it seemed that he didn't want to die, but he couldn't turn around, and his face was full of fear. What's there to see at the scene? Not to mention the guy who jumped into the river, he can't die. "Unran, do you have a way to see Sweet's house?" Maureen asked. Unran withdrew her eyes from the TV and took out a mobile phone from her pocket. "My mom said that if you get lost, use the navigation map. She taught me how to use it last time. Here is a satellite map. Their maps are very powerful. You can switch to satellite mode, and then..." And Ran entered the Snow Orphanage, and a red dot appeared on the map. The map was a Muggle satellite looking down from the sky. The houses on it were very small, but you could see the staggered shapes of the houses, and the roof of the orphanage could also be seen. "Can you get through like this?" And Ran asked, pointing to the slightly blurry roof. "Oh, this should be possible." Maureen looked at the phone in Ran's hand in surprise. But is it really here? Your Muggle phone can actually see it so clearly? Sweet, is this point correct? Chapter 214 Orphanage. Sweet looked at the map displayed on the phone and nodded, yes. Then I'll take you there to confirm it. Maureen confirmed the roof of the orphanage again, then pulled Sweet and disappeared into the air, and appeared on the roof in the blink of an eye. There were many sheets hanging here, some shiny iron racks with paint peeling off, many flowers, and a rusty antenna at the corner of the fence. Although this roof looked different from what Ran's phone showed, the phone couldn't show these specific things, but it was almost the same. Yes, it's here. Sweet looked around and saw the familiar roof. He was also very surprised that Maureen actually apparated here with the help of the mobile phone map. Then I'll go back and pick them up. Maureen apparated again and brought Ran and Hugo over. Wow, does that mean that as long as you have this Muggle phone, you can travel around the world? Hugo couldn't wait to borrow Ran's phone. Ran's phone was a touchscreen, and she patiently taught Hugo how to use it. Maureen looked at Hugo clumsily swiping the screen of his phone and said, maybe I will consider asking my grandfather to buy me a Muggle phone when I go back. Although these instruments will be interfered with in places with strong magical magnetic fields, it will be fine as long as we don't go to those places. Maureen found that Muggles are really smart in some areas. Their technology is quite advanced. No wonder the Ministry of Magic makes Muggle studies a compulsory course. If we use Muggle technology, magic can be more convenient. It was the first time that Maureen became interested in Muggle things. Sweet, do you have a Muggle phone too? Maureen remembered that Sweet was familiar with Muggles. I don't have money to buy a mobile phone, and I don't care about that. I grew up in a wizard family. Sweet shook his head and walked towards the somewhat shabby staircase. The staircase door was a large iron door painted green. At this time, the door was locked from the inside, but this did not bother Maureen. He picked up the wand and knocked on the door and it opened. Sweet led them down the stairs. The walls of the orphanage were painted light blue, and many places had already fallen off. The steps were also worn very smooth, and some places had a missing corner of cement, which looked quite old. The orphanage was old-fashioned, with 3 floors. Sweet motioned them to stop at the corner of the stairs on the 3rd floor. Our director is a very strict person. She doesn't welcome you. It's best not to be discovered by her. Wait here. Sweet walked to the 3rd floor and looked around at the stairs. A black-haired boy came over. Sweet, the director just asked you. You'd better be careful. She's in a bad mood today. The boy said. I know, Hill, I'll go find the director later. Sweet nodded. After Hill walked over, Sweet waved to Maureen and the others, motioning them to come down. Does your director have a bad temper? Maureen asked. She's not nice to anyone and doesn't like this job. Sweet nodded, walked quickly along the corridor on the 2nd floor, and then opened the door of a dormitory to let Maureen and the others in. The dormitory was dim and small, and they felt very crowded when they walked in. There was only one bed in the room, and a little girl was lying on the bed. The little girl seemed to be sleeping. The whole room was very stuffy and there was a strange smell of medicine, which made people feel quite pungent. After she fell into coma, the dean arranged for her to come here. Sweet walked to the window and opened a small window to let the smell out. Maureen waved his wand, and a breeze blew, which solved the smell and cleaned up the dirty and messy floor. Sweet sat by the bed and touched the girl's head. His stiff face relaxed for a rare moment. He said, her name is Winnie. She is only 8 years old this year. When she first arrived at the orphanage 2 years ago, she was afraid of strangers and didn't dare to walk around. But she kept following me. I don't want her to get hurt. Sweet looked at Ran and said, can you see where she is injured? I can't heal her with magic. And Ran reached out and held Winnie's hand. A faint white light appeared on her hand. The white light sank into Winnie's body and kept flashing. The white light soon flowed to Winnie's forehead. Huh? Ran was a little puzzled. What's wrong? Sweet asked hurriedly, where's she injured? She's not injured, but... Ran didn't seem to know how to answer. Not injured? Then why is she unconscious? Even if she is a vegetative person, it's because of brain damage. Is she the same? Sweet asked nervously. No, she seems to be missing something. I can't tell. Ran touched Winnie's forehead, puzzled. Something is missing? What do you mean? Sweet asked. Maureen said, Sweet, Winnie is very likely to have been hurt by some very powerful magic. Ran doesn't know much about magic now, So I guess she can't explain it clearly. What should we do then? Sweet looked very depressed. Maureen thought for a moment. I'll ask my grandfather to take a look. He has more experience. Maybe he can send her to St. Mungo's. That's strange. Maureen seemed to sense something. He clearly felt that something in Ran was very different from that of a normal person. The latest novels are first published on 6th Book Bar. What did you find? Sweet asked. Maureen said uncertainly, she seems to have lost consciousness, as if someone has taken her consciousness away. She has become incomplete and not like a person. Taking away consciousness. Hugo said in surprise, I've heard that taking away a person's consciousness from their body is a very evil black magic. Maureen, are you sure? Yes, I've heard about this from my grandfather before. Some black magic specifically takes away a person's consciousness. Maureen looked at Winnie. I can feel that she is in this situation now. I don't understand, what does it mean to take away consciousness? Sweet asked. His knowledge of these things is far less than that of Maureen and Hugo. Let me put it this way. You should know the Imperious Curse, right? The Imperious Curse is to control a person's consciousness, but a person's consciousness is still in his body. If a person dies, the consciousness will become a soul, that is, a ghost. But your sister's consciousness is to some extent attached to a certain black magic device. She is not really dead, she is still alive, but she cannot move freely. Maureen explained. So if you want to wake her up, the only way is find that magic device. Maureen nodded. Lucas. Sweet clenched his fists. That magnet, it must be that magnet. Maureen felt that the situation was a little tricky. Maybe it was really the magnet in Lucas' hand that caused the trouble, but now they didn't know where Lucas was. By the way, how did you know Lucas's whereabouts? The staff of the Ministry of Magic couldn't track him. How did you catch him? Maureen asked. Sweet gritted his teeth, as if hesitating whether to speak. Sweet, if you want to save her, you'd better tell me the truth. Maureen said. Sweet was silent for a moment, nodded, and when he was about to speak, a sharp voice suddenly rang out in the corridor outside. Sweet. Where the hell have you been? Did you sneak out to see the Spartan again? Chapter 215. The director of the orphanage. The door in the room banged. The person knocking on the door was so strong that it seemed as if he was going to tear the whole door down. Sweet jumped up from the bed reflexively, as if he was extremely sensitive to the sound. Hide. Sweet panted, and he looked a little anxious. Maureen and the other three stood by the wall. Sweet walked over quickly, opened the door a crack, squeezed out, and closed the door tightly, fearing that the person outside the door would see what was happening in the room. You've been here all morning, haven't you? I asked you to mow the lawn in the yard, what did you do? This was the voice of an old hen, sharp and hoarse, and the tone of speaking to Sweet was 7 parts annoyance and 3 parts disgust, which was annoying. I have done it, Mrs. Rodney. Sweet said stiffly. I asked you to mow the grass on the lawn to less than 1.8 inches, but there is still 2 inches of grass in one area. Mrs. Rodney yelled at Sweet. Maureen and the others in the house looked at each other in bewilderment. The requirements for mowing the lawn were so strict? Did Mrs. Rodney measure with a ruler? But Mrs. Rodney continued to roar, I don't care where you go to learn magic and witchcraft. If you don't do your job well, I promise that you won't be able to go to any circus school next semester. You and the Spartan can't stay here. I will do it again. Sweet's voice was cold. I don't like your tone. Little orphan, you have to say to me, I will do it again, Mrs. Rodney. I will do it again, Mrs. Rodney. Sweet's voice sounded very annoyed. What are you looking at? Do you think you can scare me just because you learned a little magic? If you want to keep that vegetable bird in here, you must forget your identity. If I can check a blade of grass before 5 p.m. Yes, if a blade of grass is not cut properly, you can wait to be beaten. Mrs. Rodney strode away, and the sound of her high heels thump-thump echoed in the corridor, sharp and mean, and particularly clear. After a while, Sweet came in, still looking pale. Sorry, I have to do something. Sweet pursed his lips. This woman is really annoying, isn't she? Hugo couldn't help saying, I thought the director of an orphanage should be kind and virtuous. This orphanage is funded by the government. She was just sent here to be the director. She doesn't like this job. Sweet replied sullenly. So she knows you are a wizard. Maureen had never seen such a sarcastic woman. Sweet nodded. She doesn't agree with me going to Hogwarts. She likes to control everything. To her, I am an uncertain factor. She doesn't look good to you. And Rand said, she is not good to all the children in the orphanage. Every child has been beaten by her. Almost everyone has bruises on their bodies. Sweet seemed to have gotten used to Mrs. Rodney's attitude towards him. Then are you also? Hugo asked hesitantly. Sweet was silent and did not answer. Why didn't anyone report her? Beating children is illegal now. And Rand said. Sweet shook his head. It's not that simple. Her husband is a police officer in the police station. It's useless to report it. She will always find a way to cover it up. Maureen said, forget about her for now. How did you track down Lucas's whereabouts? Sweet glanced at Hugo and ran, hesitated for a moment, and said, some of my special abilities, you have seen them in the painting that day. Maureen nodded thoughtfully and continued to ask, can you find out now? No, only within a certain distance. Sweet shook his head, looked at Winnie on the bed worriedly, and said, I'm going to mow the lawn. This is her job, but now. Sorry, I have to do this for her. Sweet left the room. What should we do now? Hugo asked. He wanted to find a crack in the ground to sit down, but there was not even a chair in the room. The room was too dark. Maureen pondered for a moment and said, when I get home, I will ask my grandfather to help me find out about Lucas. But before that, there is one thing to be solved first. He also walked out of the room and headed downstairs. The latest novels are first published on 69 Shuba. Sweet was pushing a lawnmower in the courtyard of the orphanage, mowing the lawn that had already been mowed once. The red lawnmower was shabby and the red paint on it had peeled off. It would shake every 2 steps. The courtyard exuded the smell of fresh grass juice. Mrs. Rodney, wearing a purple long skirt, was standing in the yard supervising Sweet. She held a tape measure in her left hand to measure the length of the grass, and a whip in the other hand, whipping Sweet. Hurry up, I hate you orphans who have no parents and like to be lazy, especially you, Sweet. Do you think you can become a magician just by learning some childish tricks? Don't dream, you will only be a lowly person for the rest of your life. Mrs. Rodney sneered in a long shrill voice, and her eyes were full of contempt when she looked at Sweet. Sweet did not refute her words. Even when he was whipped, he did not resist. He just gritted his teeth and concentrated on doing his own things, which made Mrs. Rodney even more proud. Lowly orphan, this is just a little lesson for you to let you understand your identity and what future an orphan can have. Mrs. Rodney's fat face was filled with a morbid pride. I don't think so, Mrs. Rodney. Maureen came over from the stairs and saw Mrs. Rodney whipping Sweet. She was furious. Don't use your narrow vision to decide someone's future. Mrs. Rodney turned around and stared at Maureen. Her pointed nose wing fluttered slightly, like the wings of a bat. Where did you come from? What are you doing here? I'm Sweet's classmate. Maureen didn't like Mrs. Rodney's tone. She was the most disgusting woman who took out her anger on orphans because she didn't like her work. Sweet's classmate. Mrs. Rodney turned her head and stared at Sweet with a sinister look. Learning magic with you? Sweet, what did I tell you? Don't let me see anything about your magic, including people. You ignored my words, didn't you? You are not allowed to eat today and tomorrow. Mrs. Rodney whipped Sweet again, but this time she didn't hit Sweet. Her whip seemed to be blocked by something. Chapter 216 Punishment. Sweet lowered his head and clenched his fists. Maureen was very annoyed. He had never seen such a disgusting muggle. Magic? Do you think we only learned simple magic? Mrs. Rodney didn't know why her whip didn't hit Sweet just now. She didn't realize who was standing in front of her. She still sneered with disdain, isn't it? What else can you do after graduation besides performing in the circus? That kind of idiotic magic, taking out 2 pigeons from the sleeves, conjuring a flower or something, a bunch of fake tricks. The clown industry with no future is the most despised. I don't know what a circus is, Mrs. Rodney. Maureen said disgustedly, but I know that any job should be worthy of respect. If you don't like your job, you can change it yourself. It's stupid to vent your anger on others. Mrs. Rodney laughed as if she had heard some funny joke. Her fat face was squeezed into a ball when she laughed, and her green bean-sized eyes were almost squeezed out by the fat. Work? I have to take care of you orphans every day, and you are still not satisfied? You are lazy when I ask you to do some work. You are a bunch of unwanted little beasts. I take care of you with good intentions, and you dare to have opinions about me. Mrs. Rodney said sarcastically. This is your job. You should do it well if you are paid. If you don't like it, You can resign instead of being so vicious and insulting others. You only know how to bully these children all day long. I don't know where you get the courage to say that you are taking care of them," Maureen said coldly. Mrs. Rodney narrowed her eyes, and her eyes finally disappeared in a pile of fat. "Do you have any problem with my work? Do you want to stand up for them? Perform a magic trick on me? Are you going to make a pigeon to make me laugh? I know your rules. Sweet received a warning letter a week ago, right? You are not allowed to perform magic tricks outside the school. Don't think I don't know. They will expel you." "Expel me?" Maureen said calmly. "They won't expel me, you can rest assured about that." Maureen held the magic wand, crossed his arms, and looked at Mrs. Rodney. This old woman must have bullied and beaten the children in the orphanage a lot. He felt that he needed to discipline her and let her learn something. But Mrs. Rodney still shouted tartly, "I'm not afraid of the little wooden stick in your hand. You clowns who conjure up a few flowers and ribbons to entertain the public, I hate you the most. Get out of here. I just think you should learn a lesson." Maureen said, "Wizards don't use magic on Muggles. The premise is that wizards and Muggles respect each other, but if you don't respect wizards and don't respect your own people, I don't have to abide by any rules." "Really? What rules do you clowns who perform magic still care about? It's really funny. A clown who can only conjure up rabbits." Mrs. Rodney walked towards Maureen with a tape measure in one hand and spitting saliva flying, ready to drive Maureen out, but she suddenly felt that the tape measure in her hand seemed to wriggle and wrapped around her wrist. She looked down involuntarily and screamed in horror. The tape measure in her hand turned into a white snake at some point. The snake wrapped around her arm and spit a scarlet snake tongue at her. "Ah, where did the snake come from? Go away, go away." Mrs. Rodney jumped up on the spot. Her body full of fat jumped so high that it looked like an ugly purple sandbag. Her fat high heels also jumped off and almost fell to the ground. "Get out of here, ah! What is this thing?" She shook her hands desperately, trying to shake off the snake. But the snake flexibly climbed along her wrist to Mrs. Rodney's neck. You disgusting clown, you dare to bring a snake to me, you, ah!" Mrs. Rodney screamed. Her voice was as sharp as nails scratching on glass, making Maureen want to cover his ears. It was the first time he heard such an ugly scream. "I thought you were very brave, Mrs. Rodney. When you whipped Sweet with a whip just now, your hand seemed to be quite strong." Maureen smiled faintly. "You damned little beast, I won't let you go." "Oh, whip, whip." Mrs. Rodney tried desperately to drive the snake away. After Maureen's reminder, she remembered that she still had a whip in her other hand, so she whipped it without hesitation, trying to whip the snake away. But she didn't hit the snake, and the whip hit her face instead. A red stripe suddenly appeared on her fat face, and she screamed in pain again. The white snake had already turned in front of Mrs. Rodney's eyes, and the snake's tongue stretched out and touched Mrs. Rodney's nose. Mrs. Rodney trembled all over, and her scream stopped abruptly. She didn't dare to move any more, for fear that the snake would bite her. "You think it's fun to beat others, don't you?" Maureen looked at Mrs. Rodney. The snake was just a tape measure, not a real snake, but a Muggle like Mrs. Rodney couldn't tell the difference between real and fake. "Get rid of this damn thing, you lowly bad boy. I will ask my husband to catch you. He is a policeman and will arrest your whole family and put them in jail for life. You are dead." Mrs. Rodney roared. But the white snake suddenly opened its bloody mouth, showing its sharp teeth and protesting to her. Mrs. Rodney was frightened. Her face turned extremely pale and her legs trembled like sieve bran. "I thought you would know that you were wrong." Maureen frowned. Now it seems that this is not the case. The snake's eyes had already lit up, and Mrs. Rodney was frightened by this terrible snake. The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar. I was wrong, please, get rid of this snake. Sweet won't have to work anymore, please." Mrs. Rodney was already crying, no longer her arrogant attitude. "It's not just Sweet, Mrs. Rodney," Maureen said coldly. "Children without parents are unfortunate enough, and you bully and beat them at will. People like you are really despised." The white snake spit out its tongue again and bit Mrs. Rodney's nose. "Ah, I'm dead, I'm dead. I'm going to be poisoned to death. Call an ambulance, call an ambulance. I can't die, I don't want to die, help." Mrs. Rodney screamed incoherently. She was extremely scared, and at the moment her nose was bitten, she even felt that her breathing was about to stop, and then she rolled her eyes and collapsed to the ground. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, It means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 217, Buying a Muggle Machine. Sweet looked at Mrs. Rodney, who was frightened and fainted, and there was a trace of disgust in his eyes. He was quite disgusted with Mrs. Rodney and did not feel pity for her at all. Compared with the beatings Mrs. Rodney usually gave to orphans like them, the punishment that Maureen gave to Mrs. Rodney was already light. But Sweet shook his head and said, "You shouldn't cast magic on her. She is a Muggle, and after you leave, she will probably become even more violent to us." The snake that bit Mrs. Rodney's nose had disappeared and turned back into a tape measure. Mrs. Rodney's nose was only pinched and was not poisoned at all. To be honest, I don't have any prejudice against Muggles. Maureen took out his wand and pointed it at Mrs. Rodney, casting a forget spell on her, but sometimes wizards can't be too aggrieved, right? Respect is given to each other. Did you modify her memory? Sweet looked at the white light emitted by Maureen's wand. I've never tried to modify memory before, but I think it should work. Let me think. Maureen looked around and said, should an orphanage be a place full of love and care? The director should be a loving person. The orphanage is not as simple as you think. Sweet didn't seem to like it here. He frowned and said with a hint of disgust and aversion, all the children here have no parents. They can only have food if they obey the orders of the director. Parents. Maureen's expression did not change. He had parents, but it was the same as not having parents. However, he was very content because he had a grandfather. I know that many things are not that simple. Maureen put away his wand and looked at Mrs. Rodney, so I can make things simpler. He waved his wand. Mrs. Rodney took a deep breath and opened her eyes. Sweet saw that Mrs. Rodney had woken up, and quickly grabbed the lawn mower. She was about to continue working, but Mrs. Rodney stood up and said to Sweet with a loving face, "Oh, dear, how can you operate such a dangerous machine at such a young age? What if you get hurt? Put it down, I'll go and ask someone to do it." This, Sweet was slightly surprised and looked at Maureen in confusion. It was too strange to see such a loving expression on Mrs. Rodney's face. He had never seen Mrs. Rodney have such a side. I just think she should be more diligent. Maureen was quite satisfied with his magic. He modified Mrs. Rodney's memory and made her fall in love with her job. The director of an orphanage must be a bit good. Only people who love children can be competent for this job. This is a good choice. I should have thought of it earlier. Sweet nodded, put down the tools in his hand, and ignored Mrs. Rodney, who called the housekeeping company. He and Maureen walked towards the dormitory building. Sweet continued, she is very stingy. She thinks the salary for this job is too low. She embezzled all the subsidies allocated by the Muggle government. It was impossible to hire people to do these things in the past. It's a pity that I can't use magic outside of school. I was warned last time. This time. Sweet frowned, as if he remembered something, and looked up at the sky. I just performed magic in the town, why didn't I receive a warning letter? Even if I had to, I should have received a letter, right? Maybe because of me. Maureen remembered what Lady Rhea said. As an invisible man in the wizarding world, he would interfere with some prophecy and tracking magic. Last time, it was because of him that Lady Rhea couldn't see Paingard to some extent. Maybe when you are around me, the traces will also be interfered. The traces are a kind of tracking magic. Maureen said. Really? Hugo ran over from behind and just heard Maureen's words. Is it okay to use magic secretly with you? You can try it, anyway your mother. Flames are blazing. Before Maureen finished speaking, Hugo couldn't wait to take out his wand and swung it, and a flame shot out. Then Hugo scanned the sky eagerly, waiting for the owl to come. Great. Maureen, it turns out that you are our amulet. Hugo was very excited. Usually the owl was very efficient, but this time there was no owl after waiting for 5 minutes. Think about it. Other students can't use magic for 2 months, but I can, haha. Hugo couldn't help but use a few more spells. As the second generation of an official in the Ministry of Magic, he was very brave. Maureen walked into Winnie's room and used some magic to allow the air in the room to circulate at any time. He also helped Winnie clean the dirty sheets on her body, and made a few light magic on the wall, making the room a lot brighter. Thank you. Sweet said. Why do I always feel uncomfortable when you and Maureen say thank you? Hugo cast a bunch of magic bubbles next to him. and Ran looked at Hugo's bubbles that could create sparks with amazement and envy. Sweet hesitated for a moment and said, "Thank you too, Hugo." Hugo was flattered. "It's terrible that you actually thanked me." "Shut up, Hugo," Maureen said. "We should go back, otherwise Teacher Julie and the others will be worried," Ran reminded. Maureen also realized that he had been away from the farm town for too long. He said to Sweet, "Next time if you find Lucas's trace again, remember to find me first. You will be discovered if you use magic outside the school." "I don't have an owl," Sweet said. "This is a problem. Wizards still use owls to communicate, which is indeed a bit backward. Let's buy a Muggle machine too." "I like Ran's Muggle machine," Hugo suggested. "The latest novels are first published on 69 Shuba." "No money." Sweet shook his head. "Children who grew up in such an orphanage basically don't see money." "Oh my god. Are you still a wizard?" Hugo gestured with his wand. "Do we still have to pay Muggles?" "Of course, Hugo." And Rand said seriously, "Don't you wizards still use gold galleons?" Hugo rolled his eyes. Maureen also thought that the Muggle machine was good. He liked the global satellite map function. As long as you have this kind of thing, it is basically not difficult to operate anywhere. "Let's go buy a few. Maybe we can find a way to make some money. Magic serves life. Wizards will never starve to death." Maureen felt that he had learned a lot of Muggle knowledge from Professor Charles. It was time to put theory into practice. "Yes, we got high scores in the Muggle studies class." Hugo was also confident. But Maureen and Hugo soon found out that they were too naive. Compared with the real Muggle society, the pitiful Muggle knowledge they learned in the first grade was not enough. If Ran hadn't been there, Maureen would have to wave his wand every time he walked a distance in Muggle society. Maureen originally thought that he could earn enough money to buy a Muggle phone by washing dishes for a restaurant, but Ran told them that even if they washed the dishes of all the restaurants on the street, it would not be enough to buy a mobile phone. "Then is there any way to make money quickly?" Maureen and the other four walked aimlessly on the street, looking depressed. He just paraded back and cast a confusion spell on Marjorie and Julie, making them mistakenly think that Maureen and the other two were still there, and then he came back to go out on the street with Ran and the others. "Sweet, can you think of any way? You also grew up in an orphanage, right?" Hugo said. "I've only been with Muggles for 2 years, and I'm not familiar with many things." Sweet shook his head. "MRS. Rodney doesn't let us go out casually. And Ran is a Muggle born, and she knows more about Muggle things than Maureen and the others, but it's hard for her to find a way to get a large sum of money. Maureen, if I remember correctly, it was in the final exam. It was a money truck, right?" Hugo pointed to a black long box money truck that stopped at the traffic light, and said proudly, "I did listen carefully. There were a lot of Muggle coins in it, right?" Chapter 218, Palm Express. "Are we going to rob a money transporter?" Ran was surprised. "Robbing a bank is not a good idea, right? Is there a better way?" Sweet said. "But there are surveillance cameras nearby, and they will record us." Ran explained in detail to Maureen and Hugo what surveillance cameras are. "That's not the point. Maureen will handle it." Hugo was very optimistic. 4 children in their teens stood on the street and seriously discussed how to rob a bank money transporter. What a bad idea. If we have time to rob a Muggle bank, why don't we just go to the store and rob a mobile phone? Maureen said. "Well, let's just go to the mobile phone store and rob a Muggle phone." Hugo thought these things were no big deal. In the eyes of wizards, all Muggle items are insignificant. The 4 people didn't discuss anything. Maureen thought it was too troublesome, so he simply used the flying spell and secretly got 3 mobile phones from a mobile phone store. In return, he also specially helped the store repair a piece of thick glass on the counter that had been broken and had not been replaced in time. Maureen thought about it and helped the man take out the trash again. It was really thoughtful. "This feels really strange." Ran was a little worried about their actions. "Don't worry too much. I cast a Muggle attraction charm at the door of the store. Before the spell disappears, their store will have good business today. These 3 mobile phones will be considered as commissions." Maureen pointed to the door of the mobile phone store. A large number of customers suddenly poured into the store, which originally had few people. The store manager was all smiles. The customer flow was more than 10 times the usual amount. The Muggle attraction charm is the opposite of the Muggle repellent charm. It will relieve certain needs of Muggles. If a Muggle happens to want to change his phone recently, They will buy it without hesitation. This icon is really weird, isn't it? An apple bitten by a bug. Hugo happily turned the phone over and over. Have you ever thought that sometimes the signal of a Muggle phone will be interfered with by magic? Sweet held the phone in his hand. He did not show much interest in the phone. Also, I remember that the phone needs to use a phone card. That's not a problem. Maureen got 3 more phone cards. He used a confusion spell on the clerk. It was too easy to apply for a phone card. As for the interference of magic with a signal, it can only work in places where the magic power is relatively strong. Unrand taught them how to use the video and voice functions. Hugo was amazed. Muggle phones are much faster than owls. You can even see each other. You can also see a pocket watch recently used by the Ministry of Magic, but they are still in the research stage. Maureen remembered the convenient pocket watch in Alton's hand. When he got a few pocket watches from his grandfather next time, he would not need to use the Muggle phone. They memorized a number, said goodbye to Sweet, and then returned to their summer camp. The next few days of summer camp life were rich and colorful for Muggles, but for Maureen and Hugo, they were boring. Hugo spent most of his time on how to play mobile games. He played an online chess game and had a lot of fun. Maureen was studying how to modify the mobile phone. He saw the text messages that could send pictures and voice messages, and a bold idea came to his mind. After trying for a day, he finally installed a novel function on his mobile phone. Is this a handheld courier? And Ran looked particularly surprised. She watched Maureen throw a stone into the screen of her mobile phone, and then the stone appeared and drilled out of Hugo's mobile phone screen. Handheld courier? This name sounds good. Maureen smiled. It seems that owls may retire. Hugo was also quite surprised. With this magic, he could send packages online at any time and arrive immediately. It was as convenient as it could be. Unran couldn't wait to ask, how did you do it? This is a bit difficult to explain. Last time, my grandfather had a pocket watch that could operate to another pocket watch at any time. I think it was a variant of operate magic. However, to use that pocket watch, the user needs to know how to operate. But I figured out this magic by myself, and you don't need to know how to operate. Maureen pointed to an icon on the phone and said, I integrated the spell into this icon. Click on the phone and it will change. There was a white round icon on the screen, which was very simple and without any decoration. He clicked on the icon, and the entire phone screen immediately turned white, and then water ripples appeared, like ripples. Hugo's phone immediately changed in the same way. I'll show you. Maureen reached into his phone, and then his fingers stretched out from the screen of Hugo's phone. Maureen's palm disappeared in his phone, but appeared in Hugo's phone. The two phones were about 1 meter apart, as if there was a fault, and Maureen's fingers could still move at will. It's a bit weird. Hugo patted Maureen's hand and couldn't help saying, I think it's good. Think about it. Next time I will use my mobile phone to get your astronomy homework. To be honest, I haven't finished my astronomy homework for the summer vacation. Maureen retracted his hand. Hugo's eyes lit up. Great. After I go home, I want all your homework in history of magic, transfiguration, charms, herbology, etc. The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar. You are really a genius. Unran exclaimed. You know, it takes several days for us to deliver express delivery, and sometimes the express delivery will be lost on the way. My father often complains that online shopping is unreliable and the goods delivered by express delivery will be damaged. If this spell that Maureen figured out is promoted in the Muggle world, then the express delivery industry will probably be directly eliminated and become a historical document in the museum. By the way, can this teleport people? Hugo asked curiously. I can do it if I improve it. Currently, magic can only transmit things the size of a mobile phone screen. I just learned how to use a mobile phone camera. I'm thinking about whether I can change this magic to transmit by taking a photo. Maureen said. Maureen's idea is very simple. If you want to transmit a package, take a photo of the package and click send. When another mobile phone receives it, click on the photo and the package will pop out of the photo. But this is difficult, because when taking a photo, it is very likely that the mountains and houses in the background will be taken into the photo. It is unrealistic to transmit those things. Maureen must overcome these difficulties. Maureen spent the next 2 days studying this magic, and also asked Arnak about relevant magic knowledge. There are many ways for wizards to travel. Apparition is not a big problem for wizards. Flu powder and door keys are also common. But to allow a magical item to be transmitted anytime and anywhere with a mobile phone, the spell required must be quite powerful. Flu powder transmission is supervised by the Ministry of Magic, and there must be a fireplace specially connected to the flu network. It is not possible to just conjure up a fireplace. Portkeys have a time limit and require registration. Ordinary wizards simply do not have enough power to conjure a portkey. These two things basically teleport people. Maureen combined the characteristics of flu powder and portkeys, plus his own special magic, and figured out the magic of mobile phone teleportation. On the day when the summer camp ended, he finally perfected this palm-held express delivery. 3 chapters updated today, 4,000 recommendation votes. Chapter 219, Palm Express. Do you want to try? That little sparrow just jumped over there alive and well. Maureen waved his phone and said to Hugo. He cast not just one magic on this phone, but more than a dozen special magics interacting with each other, many of which were taught to him by Arnag temporarily. Okay, let me do it. Hugo was very eager for Maureen's palm-mounted express delivery. If it succeeds, I can sneak out if my mother grounds me in the future. Turn on your phone camera and point it at anything. Maureen gestured to Hugo, who turned on his camera and put it aside. Maureen used his phone to fit Hugo's upper body into the screen, and then tapped Hugo on the screen with his finger. Hugo on the screen seemed to be circled, and then the camera emitted a white light, covering Hugo. Swish! Hugo felt that he was hooked by something and disappeared from the spot, while the phone camera on the other side also emitted a white light, and Hugo appeared next to his phone intact. Cool. This is equivalent to me mastering the apparition. Hugo picked up his phone and excitedly took a photo of Maureen, letting Maureen try it out and successfully teleporting Maureen. It's a pity that there's a shortcoming. I can't bring my phone with me. Maureen said with some regret. It's already very good. This phone is equivalent to 2 connected doors. It's really amazing magic. Hugo said excitedly. Then Anran, see you in September. Of course, if there's anything, call me at any time. Maureen also set the same magic for Anran's phone, and he could choose people to teleport like the address book. He would cast the same magic on Sweet's phone next time. Okay. Anran waved her hand. The presence of Maureen and Hugo made her realize that she was not a freak. She became much more cheerful these days. When Maureen got off the car, Alton was already waiting for him there. How was the Muggle summer camp? Did you learn a lot? Alton took Maureen's school bag with a smile. Great. Maureen put away his cell phone. Casting magic on Muggle items will be investigated by the Ministry of Magic, especially since Alton is a retired official who specializes in such matters. Maureen thinks it is better to keep it secret. On the way home, Maureen told Alton about Sweet's sister, and Alton was very surprised. They didn't treat Muggles. Alton frowned. No, Sweet Alden told me that the Ministry of Magic ignored this girl. Maureen said. Maybe they were negligent in their work and missed it. Then I'll go and see. Alton took Maureen to Sweet's orphanage and carefully checked Winnie's condition. Unfortunately, even Alton was helpless in this matter. Even if this little girl is sent to St. Mungo's hospital, it won't work. She has lost her consciousness. Alton's conclusion was the same as Maureen's guess, and he looked very serious. Don't worry. I will talk to the relevant personnel of the Ministry of Magic about this matter, Lucas, right? I know. Alton said to Sweet. Thank you, Mr. Walker. Sweet said gratefully. No, this is what the Ministry of Magic should have done. After Alton took Maureen home, he went directly to the staff of the Ministry of Magic to reverse the incident the next day, but the news he brought back was not satisfactory, and the Ministry of Magic did not find Lucas's whereabouts. I have already talked to Anderson from the Reversal of Incidents team. Once he finds Lucas's whereabouts, he will notify me immediately, and I will go to deal with it together. Alton was very responsible for this matter. Although he retired, he just couldn't sit still. After the summer camp, Maureen continued to practice magic in his room and improved his Muggle machine by the way. He also pestered Alton to borrow his magic pocket watch to study the function of this magic pocket watch. After all, this pocket watch was developed by the Ministry of Magic and was very functional. How many spells have been cast on the pocket watch? As long as we follow Arnag's instructions, we should be able to know. Maureen has been asking Arnag about the working principle of magic through the parchment these days. Arnok taught him a way to understand the magic contained in an item without triggering the spell of the item. Just when Maureen was about to secretly take down the pocket watch to study magic, the pocket watch suddenly turned twice, and the dial turned into a mirror, and Anderson's face appeared in the mirror. Alton, the same accident happened here on Kerr Street. You told me that when there was news about Lucas. Oh, it's Maureen. Where's Alton? Anderson said hurriedly. Have you found Lucas's whereabouts? Maureen noticed that there was a ruin behind Anderson. The ruin was exactly the same as what he saw in the farm town a few days ago. All the steel, concrete, glass and wood were sucked into a ball. Yes, almost. Give the pocket watch to Alton, okay? Anderson urged. Maureen walked out and handed the pocket watch to Alton, who was dozing on the sofa. Alton took the pocket watch and immediately sat up hurriedly, saying, I'll be there right away. Maureen, you wait at home. Grandpa, I'll go too. Maureen said hurriedly. It's dangerous there. You wait at home. You can't go. Don't worry, I'll take care of Lucas's matter. Alton had disappeared in the living room. He must have apparated to Anderson's side. The latest novels are first published on 69 Shuba. Maureen ran back to his room and took his phone. He lived in a Muggle community, and the magic at home would not interfere with the signal. He opened the map on his phone, entered Kerr Street, found the building, and kept getting closer. Then he apparated to the roof of this building. This is a 5-story office building with a layer of iron sheet on the roof. It was already evening, and the sun was setting, dyeing the clouds red. Maureen stood on the roof and looked down. There were some police cars and fire trucks parked in the street. A building not far away was billowing with smoke. It looked like it was on fire. There were some people in suits and leather shoes outside who hurriedly crossed a cordon and ran into the building. Huh? That building. Maureen found that the building he saw was enchanted. When Muggles looked at it, it was just smoking at best, but Maureen could see another scene. The building had been twisted and collapsed into a big wall. Maureen immediately apparated to the remote alley opposite, and then ran quickly towards the building. He saw his grandfather in the crowd. Alton had changed his clothes into a suit, took out a police badge and showed it to the police, and then walked into the building. Maureen quietly went around the back of the building and ran towards a wall. When he passed through the wall, the building in front of him had already disappeared, leaving only the ruins. Maureen hid behind a big tree with messy leaves. Did you catch him? Alton asked. No, he apparated away, but he left some magical traces. The people from the Department of Mysteries are tracking him, and there should be news soon. As soon as he finished speaking, a wizard wearing sunglasses ran over from a distance. Maureen recognized that it was Edmund from the Department of Prohibition of Misuse of Muggle Objects. Thank God, Alton, you're here too. Edmund said breathlessly. I was dealing with a street lamp biting incident nearby, and suddenly heard about the explosion here, so I rushed over. I was just about to ask you how to remove the magic of street lamp biting. Street lamp biting is not important. The accident in this building is serious, and it is also within the scope of responsibility of the Department of the Prohibition of the Misuse of Muggle Artifacts, Edmund. Alton said. I understand. Edmund nodded. Then a woman in a black wizard robe apparated to their side and said quickly, we have tracked down Lucas' whereabouts. Chapter 220 Muggle Office Building. Janet, where's he? Alton asked. According to the information left by the magic traces, Lucas is in an office building 3 streets away from here, and he doesn't seem to be planning to leave. Janet pointed a black map in her hand to Alton. We'll be there soon. Janet, you and Anderson should restore the building here. There are quite a few Muggles around, so explain that there is a toxic chemical leak and ask them to leave quickly. Alton has a good reputation in the Ministry of Magic. He knows a lot of people. He is also a retired senior official, so his words carry more weight. Everyone also tacitly agrees that he is the leader. Janet took out her wand and turned her wizard robe into a suit. Janet, this kind of suit is for men, it won't suit you. Anderson reminded. Really? Sorry, I don't know much about Muggles, just make do with it for now. Alton and Edmund had already apparated and disappeared into the air, and Maureen disappeared with them. Maureen appeared behind a hidden trash can. When he poked his head out, he saw Alton and Edmund standing outside the building, casting a spell to prevent the building from apparition. At this time, many people ran out of the building in a panic. These people were all Muggles who usually worked in this office building. Now there was a commotion in their workplace, and everyone looked very panicked. Fire! A woman in high heels shouted anxiously. One of her high heels had already been lost. The 9th floor is full of fire. There's a flood on our 8th floor. Another fat man rushed out, stumbled, and almost rolled on the ground. He still had his employee ID card hanging around his neck. He said to his colleague next to him with a horrified look, "I also saw the boss fall into the toilet and was flushed away." Yes, he was flushed away by the toilet. Great. He was flushed away. Oh no, I mean, it's too bad. Another man with black glasses, dark circles under his eyes and macy hair suppressed his smug expression and said with regret, although he is stingy, mean, sarcastic, and likes to make things difficult for people, I love him. With the help of the guards, the Muggles quickly evacuated the office building. Alton and Edmund squeezed through the crowd and rushed into the building. "He's still in there, isn't he?" "Nakala!" Alton shouted. There were 2 other wizards at the scene, 2 from the Auror department, who were there to maintain order and monitor the people who ran out. "Yes, Anderson contacted us to come here, he can't escape." Nakora was a young woman with green hair, with an excellent figure and short hair. She looked very energetic. Although her voice was sweet, she was definitely not a witch who was easy to mess with. "Be careful, Nakora, he could have escaped, but he stayed here. Maybe he had some purpose. Don't let your guard down." A black-haired wizard with rough and dark yellow skin next to him said dully. "Got it, Turman. He created a panic among the Muggles. Don't let him get out." Nakora had already set up a ripple at the door that was invisible to Muggles. Once a wizard passed through, he would be trapped for a while, so that the few of them would know immediately. When the last Muggle came out, Nakora and Turman had split a crack in the magic ripple and rushed into the building first, followed by Alton and Edmund. This office building is 10 stories high. The dark green glass windows outside still reflect the sunlight. It looks normal. The Muggles were still talking loudly about what happened upstairs. Why was there a flood and a fire? When Maureen squeezed through the crowd, she heard a heavily made-up woman say that their 3rd floor had turned into a swamp. This area has been imprisoned by Alton and his magic. It is impossible to operate directly. The only way is to walk. He also passed through the magic ripples. The magic ripples are ineffective for those outside. When he ran into the hall, it was empty. There was no one inside. There were only documents on the floor and various messy footprints, as well as some high heels left by Muggles. Alton and his figures disappeared at the stairs. Everyone took out a flying broom from their pockets. Obviously, if they couldn't operate here, the flying broom would become the first choice. Maureen sighed. If he had known earlier, he would have brought the flying broom. "Forget it, I won't go up." Maureen was just here to join in the fun. If Lucas was trapped in this building, it shouldn't be difficult for Alton and the others to catch him with their abilities. But at this moment, a strange feeling emerged in his heart again. This feeling came too abruptly, and almost made him tense up. What's going on? Is it coming again? Maureen had this feeling for the 3rd time. The first time was in the Muggle Opera House, and the second time was in the woods. Both times he saw very strange people, so this time. Maureen picked up a piece of paper, turned it into a baseball cap, put it on his head, put on a mask, and changed the color of his clothes to avoid being recognized by others. He looked around, trying to find where the strange feeling came from, but like the previous 2 times, this feeling was everywhere, and he couldn't find out the source. Doi grabbed Maureen's clothes on his shoulders tightly, called softly twice, pointed at the fire hydrant, and danced. "Is there something wrong with that fire hydrant?" Maureen asked as he read the words on it. He was not very clear about what a fire hydrant was used for. The latest novels are first published on 69 Shuba. Doi nodded. Maureen carefully moved to the side of the fire hydrant. There was a pile of flat white wide bands neatly wrapped inside, and a fire extinguisher was placed on the side. A silver round valve switch was connected to a thick red pipe. It didn't look wrong. "Disappear." Maureen knocked on the glass of the fire hydrant with his wand, and the glass disappeared immediately. He checked the fire extinguisher and cast a spell to detect magic, but the ripples of the whole building seemed very chaotic. It was obvious that the building was full of magic. "Hurry up, don't let him run away, he's on the 4th floor." Alton's voice came from the stairs, and there was the sound of magic shooting on the wall and breaking tiles. When Maureen was about to turn his head to look at the staircase, the fire hose in front of him suddenly twisted rapidly and wrapped around Maureen. "What the hell?" Maureen was quick-witted and immediately cast an armor spell to separate the fire hose, but when he looked closely, there was no trace of the fire hose. The surroundings became dark again, and the office building actually changed its color. The originally new and bright walls had unconsciously turned into dark gray. The floor was originally white tiles, but now it has turned into red wooden boards. The surroundings were empty and very quiet, and even Alton's voice disappeared. Is it the same situation again? Maureen remembered that last time in the woods, Hugo said that he was floating. Could it be the same here? He stepped on the wall with one foot, and then his whole body tilted, and the center of gravity shifted to the wall. In a blink of an eye, he was standing steadily on the wall. Sure enough, what is this place? Maureen ran along the wall to the corridor in front. This time he wanted to figure it out. Chapter 221 Two Moons. The corridor was very empty, and he felt a little strange, because the layout here had become different from the Muggle office building he had seen before. The entrance he had just entered disappeared and turned into a gray wall. Maureen ran along the wall to the end of the corridor, where there was a French window with curtains hanging on both sides of the window. He looked out through the window. The sky had darkened and was gray, and a few sparse stars had climbed up in the sky. But he was slightly stunned again, because he remembered that the outside of this building was originally a Muggle street, with very gorgeous modern buildings and all kinds of vehicles on the street, but what he saw through the window was a row of strange houses. These houses were crooked and the architectural style was very strange. Each house was built on a tree, as if the crisscrossing branches formed a simple and plain wooden house, and some wooden houses even had some leaves on the outside. There were also some ordinary stone houses, simple and generous, like old-fashioned castles. But each castle was built high above the ground, supported by a thick stone pillar underneath, and looked shaky. To be honest, Maureen had seen some wizards' houses built at will, with stones piled up randomly using magic, but they were definitely not as strange as the house he saw before him, not to mention that it formed a community. Am I entering a fantasy? Maureen looked at the strange house and pondered. He reached out and touched the glass in front of him. The glass was cold and did not look fake. He was standing on the glass window on the wall at this time, and his center of gravity was reversed. He simply stepped on the glass to see what would happen. The glass shattered with a crash. What surprised Maureen was that the glass fragments did not fall to the floor, but scattered everywhere, but soon gathered together again and automatically repaired the glass. At this time, Maureen heard a very strange singing voice, as if someone was humming an ethereal song. He listened for a while and walked along the wall towards the source of the sound. It was a wooden door with brown reliefs. The door was ajar. The relief on the door was a phoenix in nirvana. When Maureen walked over, the phoenix on the door turned its head to look at him. Maureen didn't care. He gently pushed the door open. He found himself walking to a balcony. A little girl was sitting on the balcony railing in front of him, looking at the gradually dim night in front of her and singing a very cheerful song. Hello. Maureen walked over carefully and asked. The little girl stopped and turned her head to look at Maureen. Maureen found that the little girl's pupils were shining with light yellow light. She was wearing a blue floral dress, had a striking white hair, and her face was a little pale. She was about 7 or 8 years old. Hello. The little girl looked at Maureen curiously. Are you lost? Lost? Maureen didn't really understand why the little girl said that, but he nodded and said, Yes, I'm lost. May I ask where this is? I don't know. The little girl shook her head. I'm waiting for someone. Waiting for someone? Who are you waiting for? Maureen asked curiously. Wait for my family. Grandma will come to pick me up later. The little girl looked very happy. I like this place. The moon in the sky is very strange, isn't it? The moon in the sky? Maureen walked to the balcony and looked up at the sky. He was surprised to find that there were 2 different moons in the dark and gloomy sky. One moon was like a crescent moon, curved like a hook, and the other moon was about to be full, bright as jade. One of the 2 moons was in the east and the other in the west. Maureen compared them a little and found that if the 2 moons were combined, they would form a full moon. How can there be 2 moons? Maureen asked, puzzled. It's amazing. The crescent moon in the east has been chasing the moon in the west. They must be eager to reunite. The little girl pointed at the moon and said, but then a trace of melancholy appeared in her eyes. It's a pity that it has never caught up. She sounded very disappointed, and Maureen was thinking about how to comfort her. But the little girl laughed again. But it's nice here. I like this place very much. The little girl touched her shoulder and said, "Mom said everything will be fine. She didn't lie to me." "Jolie, dear, you are here." A voice came from under the balcony. Maureen stuck her head out and looked down at the balcony. She saw an old lady with a cane hobbling along the wall, then leaning her body and standing on the balcony. The old woman was wearing a green wizard robe, a flower hat, and a black snakeskin bag. The pupils of her eyes flashed with gray light. "Grandma!" The little girl shouted in surprise, and she ran over and threw herself into the arms of the old lady. "Dear!" The old woman stroked the little girl's head tenderly. "I was delayed by something. I'm late. Sorry." Her eyes were full of love, but also full of regret, which made Maureen very puzzled. "It's okay, I'm here to enjoy the scenery," the little girl said happily. "Where are Dad and Grandpa?" "They are waiting at home. Let's go home. It's dark and this place is not safe." The old woman looked up at the two dark moons in the sky, and then looked at Maureen. "Who are you?" The old woman looked at Maureen strangely. "Hello, I want to know where this place is." Maureen greeted quickly. "My name is Maureen. You are the same as us." The old woman looked at Maureen's different pupils, and then shook her head. "You are different from us." This is the third time Maureen has heard this sentence. The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar. "Excuse me, what does this mean? What do you mean by different?" Maureen asked. This question has been bothering him. The old woman shook her head, as if she didn't know how to answer Maureen. "You should go home. You can't go out after dark." The old woman took the little girl's hand, walked down the balcony, and walked down the balcony wall. "Big brother, goodbye." The little girl waved happily to Maureen. "Wait a minute, why can't we go out after dark?" Maureen stepped onto the balcony and shouted to the old woman below. "Did your family tell you?" The old woman turned her head and asked. "They?" Maureen thought for a while and said, "They forgot to tell me that I just came here. Just arrived." The old woman suddenly realized, "Then you have to stay in the place where you just came, otherwise your family won't be able to find you. We are leaving." The old woman took the little girl along the wall to the opposite street and gradually disappeared in the twilight. "Stay in the place where you just came? This is really weird." Maureen felt a little unbelievable. He was thinking about where he was going next, but at this time, the night suddenly became a little strange. It was as if someone had covered the sky with a layer of red gauze, and the surroundings were reflected in a scarlet haze. Maureen raised his head and was slightly surprised. The two moons in the sky, originally as bright as jade, had turned red at some point. Scarlet as blood, as if they were about to drip down at the next moment. A strange rustling sound came from somewhere, and the sound became louder and louder, accompanied by all kinds of strange shouts and laughter, echoing throughout the night sky. Chapter 222 Creatures of the Night. Maureen kept staring at the sky, because those sudden sounds seemed to come from the sky. Then he saw countless shadows flying under the two moons. These shadows were very strange, like Pegasus and eagles, elephants and tigers, but they were completely different when he looked closely. Countless strange beasts were running in the sky and walking in the air. These shadows all had wings of different sizes, and some even had 6 wings, which was extremely strange. They roared at each other in the air, as if they were demonstrating a warning. As more and more beasts gathered in the sky, these winged beasts soon pounced on each other and fought each other to the death. Among these beasts, there were also all kinds of strange people. These people were very slender, standing on those beasts, shouting furiously, as if they were commanding those beasts. Maureen saw with his own eyes a human figure leaping high from a griffin. His figure seemed to be twisted in the air. He let out a painful roar, his hands and feet were stretched out and turned into sharp claws, his mouth also protruded, and there were even 2 ears on his head. Werewolf. Maureen recognized it. Although he had never come into contact with a werewolf, he had seen a picture of how a werewolf transformed before. The werewolf twisted and transformed towards the moon when it was full. But it's not a full moon now. Maureen looked at the 2 moons in the sky in confusion, and suddenly his heart moved, and he suddenly understood. The 2 moons that complement each other combined together are equivalent to a complete full moon. But Maureen still couldn't figure out what happened. Why did a werewolf suddenly appear in the sky? Most importantly, why did these weird things appear in the sky? Maureen stared at the werewolf closely. As a wizard, he was quite repulsive to werewolves. No one wanted to be bitten by a werewolf and become an inhuman beast when the moon was full. The werewolf was very agile. He kept jumping among the beasts in the air, making sharp and shrill cries, and rushed towards a huge eagle with wings more than 10 meters long. The eagle had 4 wings, and the werewolf landed on the eagle, grabbed the wings of the eagle with his sharp claws, and tore the 3 wings of the eagle apart. The eagle howled in pain, and its huge body fell quickly from the sky, hitting a tree next to Maureen. The huge eagle body did not crush any tree, and it was bounced off by the branches and fell to the ground with a bang. Maureen looked at the eagle 10 meters away from him. The eagle looked dying, with a very painful and resentful expression. A hole was torn in its left wing, which was split all the way to its chest. There were bright red bloodstains on its body, and it looked quite miserable. But it didn't die. Instead, it dragged its incomplete body and moved with great effort. The 3 wings that were torn off fell on the other side. When it crawled to its broken wing, it actually took it back. Then it roared, and its pair of black eagle eyes emitted violent black smoke, as if black anger was burning. But at this moment, the huge eagle suddenly saw Maureen standing on the balcony of the house and looking around. Chirp! A very sharp and fierce sound came out of the eagle's mouth. It flapped its wings and roared towards Maureen, stretching out its black eagle claws as hard as iron, as if it wanted to crush Maureen. What the hell? Maureen was shocked. The wings of this eagle were more than 10 meters long when spread out, and the pair of eagle claws were thicker than his body. If he was caught, it would be no joke. There are many obstacles. Maureen took out his wand and pointed it in front of him. A white light blocked the eagle and him like a ripple, but the eagle's huge claws only paused for a moment and immediately broke the obstacle spell that Maureen summoned. Damn it! Maureen didn't understand where this place was. He turned around and ran into the house. The eagle chased him madly and slammed into the balcony. Maureen originally thought that the balcony would be smashed to pieces if it was hit by such a huge eagle, but unexpectedly, the quality of the balcony was surprisingly good. It actually blocked the eagle's impact, and not even a brick or wall plaster was knocked off. What the hell is this? It was the first time that Maureen saw such a huge flying eagle. This flying eagle was no less than a small house. He had no doubt that his small body would be shattered into flesh and blood if it was touched by such an eagle's hook. The huge eagle flapped its wings and looked at Maureen standing at the door furiously. Suddenly, like wings, countless sharp black feathers shot towards Maureen like sharp arrows. These feathers were unstoppable with the sound of breaking through the air. Maureen quickly retreated to the house. When he was about to close the door, he found that the arrows were blocked outside the house. The house seemed to have a magical power that could protect him from the attack of the huge eagle. So as long as I'm in the house, I shouldn't be hurt. Maureen thought in surprise. Is this what the old woman meant when she said not to go out at night? He was thinking about seeing what was going on in this place, but he felt that his eyes seemed to be a little sore. He closed his eyes and rubbed them with his hands for a while, and the soreness gradually disappeared. But when he opened his eyes, he found himself standing in front of the red fire hydrant again. Both the huge eagle he had just seen and the blood moon in the sky disappeared, as if nothing had happened. The latest novels are first published on 69shushu.com. Strange. Is it an illusion again? Maureen shook his head, making sure that he was back in the building. The floor was made of smooth white tiles, with a modern atmosphere. This was the place where Alton and his team were chasing Lucas. He thought carefully about the strange scenes he had just seen. What kind of magic could make him enter strange illusions again and again? Or, was it not an illusion? Maureen couldn't figure it out, especially every time he saw some strange phenomena. He would meet some people who could walk on the wall. Those people seemed so real to him. Except that their eyes would glow, that's all. When Maureen was thinking about this, there were suddenly countless roars from upstairs, like a waterfall rushing down, waking Maureen from his meditation. Then he saw a pile of leaves pouring down from upstairs and crowded together at the stairs. He remembered that there was a group of people from the Ministry of Magic fighting with Lucas in this building, and he didn't know what the situation was now. Maureen soon found that these leaves were not right. They were not ordinary leaves at all. Each leaf was folded together, like a mouth, opening and closing. The serrations on the edges of the leaves were like sharp teeth, as if they were biting something. A figure was rushed down from the stairs, making a painful cry. This person was Edmund, who had just rushed upstairs. Edmund was bitten by these manic leaves all over his body. He used his wand to drive away these leaves. Various cutting spells, crushing spells, and even fire spells surrounded his body. But there were too many leaves. After they were chopped into pieces, thousands of more leaves came up one after another. Edmund was tripped by the leaves accidentally. All the leaves covered Edmund. Edmund was suddenly buried in the pile of leaves and screamed. Chapter 223 Troublesome Leaves. The fire is raging. Maureen rushed over, and his wand emitted a blazing flame, sweeping towards the leaves. Maureen's fire spell is now quite powerful. Although he cannot cast the kind of irresistible fire at will, his fire is not as easy to dissolve as ordinary wizards. But those leaves are very strange. They are folded together, like a mouth, and can actually swallow the fire summoned by Maureen. Although the leaves will turn into ashes directly after swallowing some flames, more and more leaves rushed over from the stairs, and Maureen's flames were dissolved by countless leaves in just a blink of an eye. Maureen's actions also attracted the attention of these leaves. All the leaves scattered and stared at Maureen. The leaves also roared towards Maureen in the whole room. Armor protection. Maureen threw out an armor spell and erected an invisible wall in front of him. The leaves crashed and all hit Maureen's armor spell. The armor spell resisted for a while, and was directly destroyed by the leaves. After casting the armor spell, Maureen ran back quickly, but the road ahead of him was blocked by leaves, which surrounded Maureen. It would not be a pleasant thing if all these insect-like leaves bit Maureen, but these leaves were too strong and could even crush flames, so it was difficult to resist them. Unstable. Maureen remembered a floating spell he had learned at the critical moment. This spell could temporarily interfere with the gravity of an area, and was specifically used to dissolve some falling objects such as gravel falling from the sky, making their falling roots unstable. The floating spell had little effect on objects with great gravity, but it worked wonders for light objects like leaves. Those leaves that pounced on him seemed to have lost control and became headless flies, bumping around everywhere. They clearly wanted to rush towards Maureen, but they could never move forward in the right direction. This spell is pretty good. Maureen looked at the leaves that looked like they were drunk, and was quite satisfied. He cast the levitation spell around himself, and any leaves that entered the range of the levitation spell began to become erratic. He used the levitation spell to come to Edmund, who was already in a coma. There was a burn mark on his chest, as if he had been hit by another spell, which made him unable to fight against the leaves. His suit was torn by the leaves, and there were even rows of bite marks on his neck and the back of his hands. Many leaves were still biting him. Maureen burned all the leaves piled on Edmund with fire and cast a wound healing spell on Edmund, but it didn't seem to work. These leaves had anti-healing magic, and many places were still bleeding. We have to get him out first. When Maureen was thinking about how to treat Edmund, Edmund felt someone beside him and said in a daze, "Go to the 3rd floor quickly, Alton and the others are in danger. Grandpa is in danger." Maureen was startled. At this moment, the voices of several people came from the entrance of the hall. Anderson and the others had already arrived. They used fire to drive back these crazy leaves and approached Maureen. "Who are you?" Anderson was slightly surprised when he saw Maureen wearing a mask and a baseball cap, because Maureen looked like a child. They didn't understand why a child would appear here. "Take him out quickly and go to the 3rd floor." Maureen didn't have time to explain anything. He cast a floating spell beside Edmund, so that the leaves that wanted to approach could not get close to Edmund, and then ran quickly to the stairs. "Wait! What are you doing? This is not the place for you." "Damn, these leaves, what kind of magic was cast on them?" Anderson used his wand to drive away the spell in front of him. He cast a crushing spell, and the powerful crushing spell swept away all the leaves in front of him. He ran towards Edmund, but countless leaves rushed over again. Those leaves kept coming one after another, and they could not be cleaned up at all. "Janet, come quickly and help me deal with these leaves. We have to send Edmund out first," Anderson shouted. Janet also used her wand to drive away the leaves that were like flying insects. She looked at Maureen, who had disappeared at the stairs, in amazement and said, "Anderson, that kid, how did he deal with these leaves?" Anderson ran to Edmund and found that the leaves around Edmund were a little dizzy. He reacted and shouted, "Use the floating spell, use the floating spell." That kid cast the floating spell. Strange, he actually knew how to cast the floating spell to deal with it. The floating spell. Janet quickly cast the floating spell around her, and the leaves that flew over her immediately became chaotic. This kid is really smart. The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar. At first, neither Janet nor Anderson thought of using the floating spell to deal with these out of control and weird leaves. They just relied on the brute force spell to deal with the leaves, but the effect was obviously not as good as the floating spell. "Anderson, he just said the 3rd floor. Our Alton and Turmoil on the 3rd floor?" Janet asked. Take Edmund out first, I'll go to the third floor to help them. Floating. Anderson cast the floating spell beside him and rushed to the stairs. Maureen was very anxious that Lucas dared to stay in the building at this time. It must be for something in the building. The leaf magic he just cast was so strange, and he had a magnet in his hand that could attract everything. He must be fearless. Edmund was also hit by a strange spell. He said that Alton and others were in danger on the third floor. God knows what dangerous magic items Lucas was holding in his hand. If his grandfather was in danger, Maureen could not sit idly by. He used the floating spell to block all the leaves and climbed up to the second floor. At this time, the second floor had turned into a world of ice and snow, and there were cold snowflakes floating and rustling. Those leaves came from the corridor on the second floor. Maureen left the second floor and climbed to the third floor. When he walked into the corridor, he saw a huge swamp in front of him. The entire corridor had turned into a swamp. The swamp exuded a fishy smell and was slightly filled with miasma. Appear! Maureen shouted in a low voice. A white light spread from the wand and sank into the rooms in the corridor. Soon he found that there was a strong magic wave feedback from a large room at the end of the corridor. But this building was imprisoned, and he could not operate here. He did not have a flying broom, so Maureen had to find a way to cross this section of the swamp. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 224, Reversal Curse. There were black bubbles in the swamp, bubbling constantly. Maureen didn't know how deep it was. He tried to break the spell directly, but he couldn't do it. These swamps were too weird. He tried again to summon a floating wooden board above the swamp, but as soon as the board was summoned, the bubbles in the swamp burst more than 2 meters high and dissolved the board summoned by Maureen. What a weird magic. I must find a way to get through. Maureen thought anxiously. Just as Maureen was thinking, Anderson had already rushed over. Where are you from, kid? Get out of here. It's dangerous here. Anderson shouted at Maureen. They are in the house at the end of the corridor. We have to hurry over. Maureen said quickly. Nonsense. This is not the place for you to play. Go home. Don't delay our work. Anderson pulled Maureen roughly, pulled Maureen behind him, and pointed his wand at the swamp, saying in a muffled voice, reverse the curse. A purple light shot out from Anderson's wand and sank into the swamp, but the swamp only rippled slightly, and all the gray miasma floated for a while, but there was no sign of dissipation. Damn, this kind of black magic is too difficult to break. Anderson cursed in a low voice. You can go outside and remove the imprisonment spell of apparition, so that we can go directly over. Maureen said beside him. We? You have nothing to do here. I am enough. Don't be a burden to me. Anderson said impatiently, besides, it is not so easy to break the apparition imprisonment spell. I reinforced it before I came in to prevent Lucas from escaping. Now there are 4 layers of apparition imprisonment spell. It will take at least an hour to break it. Maureen turned and ran to the 4th floor. He planned to run to the room on the 4th floor, and then open a gap in the floor of the room to go down to the 3rd floor. But when he ran to the 4th floor, he found that the corridor on the 4th floor was blocked by a pile of rubble and there was no way to get through. Shatter into pieces. Maureen pointed at the wall, trying to break a wall and rush through it, but he soon found that the wall here became very solid and his spell could not blow it open. He ran back to the 3rd floor. Anderson was trying various spells by the swamp. He just used a spell to shrink the swamp by 10 centimeters, but that was all. What are you doing back again? Anderson shouted, don't make trouble for me. I'm not making trouble for you. Maureen said angrily. Anderson could eliminate the swamp, but he could only eliminate about 10 centimeters at a time, and the corridor was at least 50 meters long. It was unknown how long he would have to wait for him to eliminate the swamp. Maureen looked around. If he couldn't run over directly, he had to find another way. He looked up at the ceiling. The ceiling was about 3 meters above the floor, and the bubbles could only splash more than 2 meters high. If he wanted to go over, he could only go from the ceiling. He remembered the strange scenes he had seen in the illusion several times. In the illusion, everyone in the illusion could fly over the eaves and walls, and gravity was invalid in the illusion. He also planned to try to cast a magic to reverse gravity. But the magic of reversing gravity was very advanced, and even many adult wizards could not do it. Even when Alton performed it, he only performed it in a very small area, about 4 or 5 meters in diameter, and it took half an hour to fix all the tables. But the corridor was too long, and with Alton's ability, it was impossible to reverse the gravity above the entire corridor. Maureen had never tried this magic before, but he knew what the spell was because his grandfather Alton had performed it in front of him. Maureen was going to cast this inversion spell on his feet, upside down. He took a deep breath and then stepped on the wall. This time it was very smooth, and he stood on the wall very lightly. "What are you doing? Leave." Anderson heard Maureen muttering some spell and seemed very impatient. But Maureen ignored Anderson. He found that casting the inversion spell on his feet was much more effective than casting the inversion spell on the ceiling. He could walk on the ceiling. He bent down without hesitation and ran forward along the ceiling above the swamp. "Hey! You come back. God! Can you walk like this?" Anderson looked at Maureen running on the ceiling and was very surprised. He found that he underestimated this child. You know, it was Maureen's reminder that made him realize that he could use the floating spell to deal with those crazy leaves. He originally thought that Maureen would just be a troublesome kid, but Maureen's actions were far beyond his expectations. Inversion spell. Has the inversion spell been cast on the ceiling? Anderson was very puzzled. He pointed his wand at the ceiling and found no trace of the inversion spell on the ceiling. "How did you do it?" Anderson couldn't help shouting, "How do you walk on the ceiling?" Anderson naturally knew how to cast the inversion spell, but it was also quite difficult for him to cast the inversion spell, and he was not sure if he could cast the inversion spell on the ceiling. "Cast the inversion spell on your feet," Maureen shouted without turning his head. "The latest novels are published on the 6th-9th book bar. Cast it on your own feet? That's impossible. You can't cast the inversion spell on your own feet." With Anderson's rich experience in dealing with magic, he knew the effect of this spell better than Maureen. The inversion spell can only be cast in a fixed place, and it can't be cast on your own feet. But Maureen had already run half the distance along the ceiling. The spell cast by the child running on the ceiling completely overturned his imagination. Maybe I really remembered it wrong. Can the inversion spell be cast on your own feet? Anderson was not sure. He pointed his wand at his feet and tried to cast the inversion spell. Then he also imitated Maureen and stepped on the wall. Bang! Anderson fell directly to the ground. His inversion spell didn't work at all when he cast it on his feet. "I said the inversion spell can't be cast on your own feet." Anderson got up and cursed himself for being stupid, but soon realized that if the inversion spell couldn't be cast on his own feet, why could the little boy run on the ceiling? What on earth is going on? How on earth did you do it? Anderson looked at Maureen's back, and was really shocked. "You can't do it." Maureen turned his head to look at Anderson, frowning. "This is obviously very simple." "This is not simple." Anderson's face turned red to his ears. He was frustrated that his spell was not as good as that of a little boy. "If you can't do it, find a way to eliminate this swamp. I'll go over and take a look first." Maureen had already run to the end of the corridor and rushed into the room. Anderson was embarrassed. At this juncture, he was actually looked down upon by a little boy who looked only 10 years old. It even sounded like a child giving orders. He was so frustrated. But the fact was in front of him. He couldn't use the inversion spell to run over. Chapter 225 Chase. Maureen thought that everyone could perform the reversal spell, but he was wrong. I'm afraid that except for him, basically no one could cast the reversal spell on his feet so easily. Maureen didn't have time to think about why this happened. He quickly ran to the end of the corridor and came to the door of the room that the apparition spell had just shown. This room seemed to be a suite of a certain company, and there was a sign hanging on the door. The door was a glass door, which had been blown to pieces by the spell. There was smoke and dust everywhere. Many people could be heard shouting and the sound of the spell hiding the wall, but no one could be seen. Maureen struggled to cross the glass door from the ceiling and ran into the company. There were originally countless office chairs and tables inside, but they had been blown to pieces. Burning papers could be seen everywhere on the ground, and there were also broken coffee machines on the ground. Haha, are the people in the Ministry of Magic all a bunch of trash? Lucas' voice came from the front, and Maureen heard it at once. Lucas, you'll pay the price for making such a big noise in a Muggle office building. Maureen also heard the voice of his grandfather Alton, who sounded angry but also anxious. Maureen breathed a sigh of relief, At least his grandfather should be fine. Price? You guys catch me first. Haha. Lucas was laughing wildly. Catch him. He's trying to escape. Which Nikora shouted. She fired a string of lightning sparks, but it didn't seem to hit Lucas, making the smoke even more chaotic. But at this moment, a huge explosion came from the front. Boom. Everything exploded, and the tables and chairs on the ground fell towards this side. Maureen quickly cast an armor spell in front to block a black LCD computer and laptop, and quickly hid behind the pillar. A coffee table fell on the pillar behind him, and the glass shattered all over the floor. Nicola, are you okay? Turman's anxious voice came from the smoke spell. Alton, Nicola was hit by the spell. Check her condition first. Damn, he escaped into the wall. I'll go after him. Alton shouted hurriedly. After the explosion, Maureen ran out from behind the pillar, shouted disappear with his wand, dispelled part of the smoke, and then ran towards the source of the sound. He saw the short-haired witch Nicola lying motionless in the ruins, still holding the wand tightly in her hand. In the distance, Turman's thigh was pressed by a huge stone, unable to move, and his wand fell 1 meter away. Turman was struggling to reach out to grab his wand. Without the wand, he couldn't move the huge stone on his thigh. Damn, the wand is flying. Turman was anxious. A wizard without a wand is like a tiger without claws. His thigh was pressed by a stone and bleeding. His leg was irregularly bent and looked broken. Turman heard footsteps and thought it was Alton coming back. He shouted, Alton, my leg was stuck. Help me. But when he saw a boy wearing a baseball cap and a mask appear in his sight, he was slightly stunned. Who are you? Why are you here? Leave this place quickly. It's dangerous. Where are they? Maureen quickly ran over to pick up Turman's wand and handed it to Turman. He also changed his voice slightly so that people would not recognize him. Turman noticed that Maureen also had a wand in his hand and was surprised. You are the same as us. But you are so young. Are you a student? You shouldn't be here. Oh, thank you. Leave here quickly. Turman took his wand and cast a spell to remove the big stone on his leg. His leg was bleeding profusely. Maureen even saw that his leg bones were exposed. The bones were white with blood, foam and sweat was coming out of his forehead due to the pain. However, as long as this level of injury is not caused by a spell, ordinary wizards generally know how to treat it. Even if fracture is not serious. Especially those staff members who work frequently in the Ministry of Magic need to know some healing spells. Bone straightening and tendon healing. Turman touched his thigh with his wand to stop the bleeding. The broken bone on his thigh had shrunk back and was slightly connected, but he didn't look very good. He tried to stand up but couldn't. No, I'm not very skilled in bone-setting magic. Turman said in annoyance. Bone straightening and tendon healing, is this the spell? Maureen squatted down and said, let me try. You try? You haven't learned this spell? You are such a young student, you can't cast this spell. Turman felt that Maureen had never tried this spell before from Maureen's tone. He was not confident to let a boy who looked like he was still in the first grade try his leg. It has nothing to do with whether I am a student or not, right? Maureen had indeed never used bone-setting magic, but when Turman tried to set the bone just now, he remembered the action of waving the wand. He felt that this magic was not very difficult. Whether it could succeed mainly depended on the talent of the caster. Of course it matters. You are so young, how can you have enough magic power to use the bone-setting spell? What if? Turman shook his head quickly. I don't have time to explain to you, the bones are straight and the tendons are healed. Maureen waved his wand without saying anything and pointed it at Turman's leg. When Turman was about to refuse, he was suddenly stunned. The bones on his feet seemed to heal in an instant, and even regained consciousness. How is this possible? Turman opened his mouth wide. How can you use such an advanced spell when you are so young? Have you learned this bone-setting magic before? Turman felt that this question seemed unrealistic. Such a young child is not qualified to learn the bone-setting magic. After all, he can't even do it himself. This is my first time using it. Maureen stood up and said. The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar. First time using it? That's impossible. Turman denied flatly. Are you kidding? I don't have time to joke with you. Where did they go? Maureen looked around and cast the tracking spell again. He found that Lucas and Alton had walked to the 5th floor from some unknown way, which surprised him. He couldn't apprehend here. The only exit was on the way Maureen came. But he didn't notice Lucas and Alton running past him just now. How did they get to the 5th floor? Maureen set his eyes on the broken window. He estimated that they must have gone out of the window with a flying broom. He immediately ran to the window, climbed onto the windowsill, and stepped out. "Wait, what are you doing? There's no way there!" Turman shouted. Turman was startled when he saw Maureen step out of the window. Maureen didn't have a flying broom in his hand. Stepping out of the window was waiting for death. He thought Maureen was going to fall, so he waved his wand to pull Maureen back. But Turman's spell didn't hit Maureen, who had already disappeared by the window. "You're so young, why are you so desperate?" Turman immediately ran to the window and looked down, trying to cast a mitigation spell before Maureen fell to see if he could save her. However, there was no one downstairs, and there was no sign of anyone falling. "Damn it! Where did he go?" Turman said in doubt. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.